Studio 3 for the live Las Vegas new Aero package test for the Cup cars 2019. Chris, a new look. We saw a little bit of this last year, the All-Star race. What's different? What are you looking forward to? What are you looking to get out of today?
Well, I really feel we're going to see what is different today. You know, we've seen this from time to time. We've seen it at the All-Star race last year. We've seen some things, you know, even in the Xfinity series. I'm so excited to watch how it works. You know, I think everybody has a little bit mixed feelings, but I'm telling you, I'm pretty excited to see how this test goes and to see what the guys learn when they come back to North Carolina. Hey, what have you learned? How can you make this package better?
All right, and speaking of learning, our own Jessica Ruffin is on the ground in Las Vegas. She's going to be learning. She's going to be talking to drivers and telling us what they think. Jessica, looks like a great day to be out there testing. What are you seeing? What do you anticipate you're going to learn today?
Hey guys, we are on the ground here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Drivers and teams, you can probably hear in the background, already on track, getting ahead with these 2019 rules package. A lot to unpack. The drivers and teams really haven't had a chance to see all that this package entails. You've got spoiler changes, splitter changes, and a significant reduction in horsepower, some aero changes. So this is a chance for them to really get to see what this is all about before we get on track this year in 2019. We're going to be talking to drivers all day today, getting you guys up to speed. We'll see some of the drafting sessions today to see how these cars handle in traffic, and we'll keep you guys up to speed all day long. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Chris, she hit it off right there off the bat, talking about traffic and side-by-side racing. That's the goal of this package, a better on-track product. NASCAR really keeping the fans in mind. Let's talk about some of the things that are different on these race cars, starting with the spoiler. I mean, that's one of the most visual things that fans can see. That spoiler is hiked up in the back, 8 inches tall, 61 inches wide. What will that do for on-track racing?
Well, you know, we talk about this a lot. We talk about the drafting at races, and even when you're on the road and you're working behind a big truck, and that big spoiler going from the one they had last year was very small, and it didn't make a big air pocket behind the race car. Now with a big spoiler, it's just making a big air pocket. You can think about it as you're going down the road and you got a big box truck in front of you, and you can be right up behind it, and you don't feel a lot of air. That's what that big spoiler is going to do for these race cars. I'm telling you, it's going to make the racing better. We're going to watch that happen throughout, and the guys are going to be able to drive it. It's going to put it in the driver's hand a lot more. Coming from that real small spoiler that we've seen on each and every race car last year and past years, now going to a bigger spoiler, it's pretty exciting for me as a crew member, as a crew chief, to be able to, you know, work on my car, be able to pass a guy when my tires are wore out. So I'm pretty excited to see how this works.
All right, let's move our way to the front of the car now. Aero Ducts, similar to what we've seen at Indianapolis the past couple years in the Xfinity series. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience with how those Aero Ducts work. So the radiator pan underneath the car is going to be a little bit bigger as well. So what does that translate to? We know what it translates to at a place like Indy, but when we get to Las Vegas and see that package in full on display, what do you expect to see?
Well, you're going to see the same thing you've seen at Indy, just because, so the air is going to go inside of those Aero Ducts, and when it comes out, it's going to make a bigger pocket. It's going to make the pocket bigger so cars can get right up against each other, you know, and it's just making it to where guys can make a slingshot pass or make something happen in traffic in the corners, maybe make a last lap pass. The air is going through the nose and instead of around the nose and staying connected to the race car. This is actually going through the nose, and it comes out right in front of the front wheels and makes a great big air pocket. It just makes it to where the guy behind you can kind of get a run at you and be able to pass you. And also, it makes it to where you've seen them side draft a lot, be able to pull down on somebody's door and they get real sideways. We've seen that happen at Las Vegas with Kyle Busch and Joey Logano back when they spun out, ended up getting in a little altercation afterwards. Now they're going to be able to run side by side with that big aero pocket. I'm telling you, the Aero Ducts that we've seen, and we tested those back at Indianapolis with Blake Cook, in 2016 for the Xfinity Series, we've seen that racing at Indy get better and better and better, and this will get better and better and better throughout the year as the guys and teams learn how to make it work.
All right, let's talk about horsepower. Not something you can really see on the racetrack, but we're moving from 750 back down to 550, something a little bit more manageable. Is that really going to make that big of a difference on the racetrack with all the other changes being made?
Well, I think what you, as a fan, will see, you'll be able to see and hear those guys staying in the gas a lot longer. You know, you'll hear the motor revved up a lot more. And the way to look at that is so if everybody's driven high horsepower cars and then got in something that's more smooth and less horsepower, from a V8 to a V6 or something like that, what it is it's just they're taking horsepower away so they can actually control those race cars. You know, when you have a lot of horsepower, you're spinning the rear wheels or you're doing something that is out of your control. Now they're going to be in the gas a lot. You're going to see them wide open a lot. We see that stuff, you know, at the restrictor plate races, and we see how that works. So I think with the Aero Ducts, with the bigger spoiler, high drag package, I think the lower horsepower is going to complement all of that.
Now, I know you're close to the group over there at RCR. What's the talk on the RCR campus right now? They're one of those teams that, you know, they're not running with the Gibbs and the SHRs of the world, but they're really close. Had a couple wins over the past couple of years, and this could really draw the field closer together in terms of competition. And I look at RCR as one of those groups who may be able to really benefit from this and get up there and compete with some of the heavy hitters, the big three, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and that's one reason Austin Dillon drove our second car last year at Indianapolis, trying to learn this package, understand what it does, how do you need your race car set up. They've done a lot of simulation. I actually sat and talked to Danny Stockman, which is the new crew chief on the 3 car this year, and talked about, hey, what are you working on? What are you trying to make your cars do? What do you think they're going to do? They've done a lot of simulation to be able to really get them out of the air, but also be able to drive those cars. That's something that we forget about. Yeah, you can get them out of the air and make them go fast for 1 lap, but they still got to be able to drive these race cars. They cannot just show up and 25 laps into the run not be able to drive them. They still gonna have to be able to drive the race cars, and I know what they're doing at Vegas. They got a big test plan. I'm sure Daniel Hemrick's out there watching, and he will be a big help. You know, he's been super fast in all the Xfinity races, and I just feel what RCR is working on and what they found from Michigan on last year is going to help them to be better and to catch the Gibbs cars, catch the Stewart-Haas cars. But that Stewart-Haas gang, I'll guarantee you they done figured out already how to make Kevin Harvick go win a race.
Now, there's 2 ways to look at this from a driver perspective. You're either a driver that's been around for a long time and you're used to things changing, and the best drivers like that have to evolve, or we talk about those young guys getting in those cars. They'll be a lot more similar to the Xfinity Series. So who's going to have the advantage? Will a guy like Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch have the advantage, or will somebody who's run really well in the Xfinity Series like Daniel Hemrick have an advantage once we get to Vegas?
Well, we can sit here and say, hey, all the young guys are going to have an advantage, but we've watched that last year. It's still, you know, your older group understanding what they need in the race cars, understanding how to adapt faster. And I still feel Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, those guys, Clint Boyer, all those guys are going to figure out what they need. They'll take this test and they will rock it out, everyone. They will get into it, dig in, try to figure out what they need. They'll come back to the shop, run on the simulators, run all their packages. Kevin Harvick, that group at SHR, you know, we've seen Jimmy Johnson out there. I feel like that he will be able to figure out what he needs quicker. I feel like the older guys are going to get it faster and be able to tell you, hey, we need this 25 laps into a run and be able to win a race, you know, quicker. But Chase Elliott, those guys, they'll definitely figure it out fast.
All right, so we see the single car runs happening behind us right now. So put your crew chief hat on for me. We see Ryan Newman, I believe, out there right now. So if you're Newman's crew chief, you're shaking down the car right now. What are you hoping to learn, you know, when you're out there as a single car?
Well, one unknown is how much downforce do they really have on the racetrack, okay? So their splitter, everybody talks about the splitter. How close can we get the splitter to the ground? They can have all the simulation in the world, but the unknowns is when you get to Vegas, how thick the air might be, the temperature, how fast you're going to run. What they're working on is being able to get their splitter as close as they can without dragging it, making the car go up the racetrack, understanding what maybe bump stops they need, what kind of springs they need for this, and just making runs and learning about it, learning what the car is going to do with this package. How much gas can you use? How much throttle are you going to be? Are you going to be wide open all the way around the racetrack? That's what they're doing right now before they get, into a bunch of cars racing each other, figuring out what they might need.
All right, now we have this roof cam right now at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Let's just me and you take a break. Let's let the people at home watch what these cars are doing on the racetrack, and let's take a minute to study Ryan Newman right now.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
right, Chris, so we've seen some single car runs out there. We're waiting on drafting practice a little bit later in the day. I'm getting excited just waiting for these guys to get out there because side-by-side racing obviously is something that we want to see. And with this package, I mean, it could be an every week thing.
It definitely could be an every week thing. And I think you see me smiling because I'm that racer that loves to see side-by-side racing. I'm that guy that doesn't want to see that, the leader so far out in front of everybody else. I'm telling you, this is going to bring that leader back, and it's going to create the drama that I love to see when I'm sitting at home watching the Sunday races or watching the Cup races on Sunday. I'm telling you, this package, we have seen it work time and time again with so many lead changes. And that's what NASCAR works so hard on. They work on trying to get lead changes. They work on something to be able to make the racing better. And they work, endless hours at the R&D Center. And I know they do because we talk on the phone a lot, trying to make the racing better. What can we do for the fan to make it better?
You've never had to take a trip to the R&D Center, though, right?
Quite a few times. I've even got called from this studio before where I took some trips to the R&D Center.
So when I think about close racing and more exciting racing, I think about, my mind instantly goes back to Chicagoland last year. I mean, we're going to have opportunities for guys to run down the leader, like you said, and maybe get a bumper on somebody, create some of those moments, some of those rivalries. What are some tracks that you just have in your head that you think that this package is really going to shine at?
Well, Indianapolis is one I always look at, but Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the one that they're testing at, I feel like this is a racetrack that you're going to see a lot of passing. You never know who's going to win a stage because don't forget, the stage racing has brought a lot of excitement throughout the entire race. Now, if you have someone that passes somebody on the last lap like Chase Elliott did to get that point, this is going to make it to where you can. Who's going to get the points? Who's going to be locked in going into the playoff? I'm telling you, this style racing is going to do something for all the stage racing. It's going to do something for the playoffs to see, you know what, when you're trying to get points in the stage and you can go up and pass a guy where you used to couldn't pass him, you're going to do it. And you're going to see the drama throughout the entire race.
So when we talk about stage racing, some of the best stage finishes, I mean, we're talking about guys 5th back to 10th, even back to 11th and 12th. Jousting and getting in there and nudging and gouging everything in there. So it's possibility that, we know how important the stage points are, but not only for 1st, 2nd, 3rd for those, higher paying stage finishes, but all the way back in the field is going to be nuts.
It definitely is, because I always say in a race, it's a race inside a race, right? We're racing for those stage points. You're racing for the top 10. Then you have the guys racing from 12th to like 18th. They're racing each other, and then like 18th to 25th. So it's races inside of races that people don't even see. Sometimes I get caught up in what's going on. Like last year at all these races, I'm like, who's going to make it to the next round? ISM Raceway, I'm watching that go down. Hey, you never know who is going to make it to the next round. Kyle Busch is kind of just chilling out, not really taking the lead. It's so exciting to know that we're going to do something to create passes, right? And that's what NASCAR tries to do. Each and every week, we want more and more passes, want more and more passes for the lead. And this is something that they're trying to be able to happen to where they can have more and more passes.
Now, passing is one thing, but coming down to the end of the race and the finishes, what do you think this will do for strategy? I mean, if you're out front, I mean, you're obviously going to be burning more fuel if we're talking about, having drafting practice. If you're behind that guy, you're going to be able to save a little bit, a lot more gamesmanship maybe played out there?
Well, definitely. And something that I've already thought about with this package is, you see guys stay out and they create their own by staying out, maybe blocking the guy and getting out in what we call clean air. Now the air is going to be dirty because it's coming through those aero ducts, and you're going to be able to catch up with that guy in front of you. So you might not stay out. You might automatically and plan on passing that guy on the last lap with 2 laps to go. So it's you have to look at racing different when you do, these aero ducts, low horsepower with the big spoiler, and it's going to be a treat for those crew chiefs because each race is not going to be just like this.
You said it's going to be a treat for crew chiefs, but it also has potential to give you guys a headache, which translates into a better fan experience for sure. When you're up there on that box sweating and we don't know what's going to happen, it makes it that much better. But on top of the pit box, I mean, you've really got to work hard.
You got to work hard. Your engineers are going to be working hard on what you should do, watching everybody else. 2 or 4 tires. Is track position going to be key? But also, something else that I look at that's so exciting, how about fantasy? I mean, with all the passing, who finishes where in the stages, I'm telling you, just everything that's happening with what they're trying to do with this package, to me, is creating a better fan experience, right? Is it tougher on the guys working on the race cars and stuff? Yes, because it's changed, right? It's something that's going to get changed. But the racing is so great, I feel like. And I feel like that when we seen the All-Star race last year, it was just a great race. You never knew who was going to make it into the big dance, right? So, like, I really like what we're trying to do here, and it's going to take some tweaks. It's not going to be perfect right off the get-go. It's going to take some tweaks, and that's what I like about all our guys working with NASCAR to say, okay, we need this. I will guarantee they'll come back from this test, they'll sit down with NASCAR, and they'll say, look, we need to do this to try to make this a better race. Maybe it's something like go back with a different tire, or we need more downforce. We need a little more horsepower. The guys will sit down with NASCAR and try to make it better.
It's definitely going to be a team effort, and speaking of team, our team member Jessica Ruffin is in Las Vegas. She is with Cody Ware. Jessica, what's Cody have to say? What's he feeling out on the racetrack?
Thanks, Jonathan. We're here with Cody Ware, driver of the number 51 Chevrolet in the Monster Energy Series. Now, Cody, you have not made a run yet here in the testing session, but what are your expectations looking into the session the rest of the day?
I think for us at Rick Ware Racing, we're really excited for the 2019 package. I think this is really going to kind of squish down the disparity. I think a lot of the teams are going to be a lot tighter. We're going to be racing a lot more in packs throughout the season, kind of turn it almost into pseudo-plate racing through the year. So I'm really excited to see how the package is, because I think growing the team to 2 charters this year and having this as kind of a starting point for the 2019 season is really going to give us some good momentum to start the year off.
Now, you guys are here ahead of the season, several weeks before we even see this rules package on track. What kind of advantage does that do for your team to be able to kind of have this sneak peek and see how it goes?
I think it's going to be really good. You know, I think obviously we have a couple of the teams we race with on a regular basis out here, but I think as a small team, getting the chance to test before the season starts is something we've never done before. So it really sets a good baseline for the year, and I can't wait to get out and do it.
Now, you know all the changes that come with the 2019 rules package. You've got a lot of the aero changes. You got the spoiler, the splitter, horsepower, significant decrease there. So how do you think this is going to unfold on the racetrack?
I think that single car runs are going to be pretty uneventful. I think that it's going to be a lot more controllable, especially on the 1.5 mile tracks. I think where we're going to see a lot of action and excitement is going to be pack racing. Once the racing starts and the green flag drops, I think that's where the big change is going to be, and I think we're going to see a lot more exciting racing throughout the whole race and not really see it spread out like it has in the past.
All right, well, Cody will get a chance to try out that drafting later today, several drafting sessions. A lot to unpack for him and the number 51 team. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Jessica. Chris, he obviously hasn't been out there yet, but it's going to be advantageous, you know, because it is going to bring everybody closer together. Rick Ware Racing, one of those teams who would like to have a little bit more of an advantage come Sunday. So for a driver like Cody Ware, for a team like Rick Ware Racing, 2019, they've got to be chomping at the bit to get on the track with this.
Well, they do, and I was talking to someone yesterday that was from over there, and they have 2 charters now. They're going to race a lot, but what he mentioned is exactly what I just talked about. The guys that he races with each week, week in and week out, you don't see him up front. You don't see him running for the wins, or even top 10s, or even top 15s. But who he's talking about is those guys that run from 22nd to 32nd. He races with those guys each week, and they have to go out there and test because they want that next spot, because that next spot means something to them. That means a lot to those guys when it gets to the end of the year. They might not make the playoffs, right? But they're racing inside their race, and that's created a little bit of drama inside the garage, and it's something that we don't see each and every week, but it is something that happens every week at the racetrack. You have races inside of races, and this is going to bring all of those races close together.
Talk about what it means for a team like that who, may have a 25th place car, but because of this aero package, they might eke out a 20th place finish. I mean, 5 positions on the racetrack is a pretty big deal.
Going to be a big deal, but the reason they are is because of the drama I keep talking about. Because these guys are going to be racing so hard that they're going to create wrecks and they're going to create things that, are out of their control. Somebody's going to spin out and maybe take out 13, 14 cars. Takes that group with Cody Ware up 5, 10, 15 spots, and that is a huge deal when it comes to the end of the year. So I'm telling you, what is going on with this package is going to change racing in general, even just like stage racing did. It's going to change racing.
All right, Chris, our fans are hungry for on-track action. Let's go back out to the racetrack, and we can take in some of these runs. Vegas, it looks like most of the shakedown out here is complete. We've got multiple race cars on the track at the same time now, but we've been paying attention to social media a little bit. What have some of these people been asking you on Twitter to cover?
Well, they were talking about me being excited about wrecks. I'm definitely not excited about wrecks. What I'm excited about is the passing that goes on with this package. We watched the Indy race and Xfinity series. We didn't see a lot of wrecks, but what we seen was a lot of passing, and that's what is so dramatic about a race. We want to see everybody pass everybody, and then with passes, we know that sometimes you get wrecks, and that's just going to happen. But I don't ever want to see our car come back tore up. So I want to be very clear that I'm not excited about wrecks. I'm excited about how many passes we'll see for the win. We just don't want to see somebody go lead every lap and win a race. We want to see passes. We want to see people pass for wins, and we want to see the racing throughout the entire field be better.
And like you said, if you're close to somebody, close enough to pass them, you're close enough to make contact more than likely. So who knows what we'll see this year. But let's talk about some of the things that are going on over at Colleague Racing. You mentioned the word excited. I know you were ecstatic when you walked in here because Ross Chastain, 3-race deal with you guys. Talk to me about the decision to bring Ross on board your Xfinity program.
Well, we have a lot that's going on at Colleague Racing right now. Matt Colleague is allowing us to expand. We expanded our building, put a nice new addition on. We've brought on some people to be able to ease my job a lot, and that is key. So to get Ross to come and drive the 10 car, it looks like that car is going to run about 17 races with different race car drivers. Last year we got our feet wet with Austin Dillon driving that car at Indianapolis. So Ross coming in, going to run 3 races. I'm really excited about that because Justin Haley has came in and is going to drive the 11. Went to his first test at Atlanta on Monday, and it was just how Justin has adapted to these race cars and to Ross coming in, and Ross teaching him some things on his simulator, but also just buying in as a teammate has been great just to watch and to build a company that Matt's allowed us to build. And it's exciting that Ross just came from driving the Ganassi car, right? He just won at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He ran well at every racetrack he went to. So he knows how these race cars should feel. So we can go to simulators before we get to Chicago and get his ideas of, hey, how do we need to make our race cars better? He's also going to be driving for Johnny Davis in the Ford car, so he's going to be having pit stops each week. He's not going to be rusty. So, Ross has raced against the 11 car a lot back when Blake drove it, and Ross and I, have had conversations, good and bad, and now he's on our team. So just excited to have Nutrient Ag on board, brand new sponsor to the series. It's our second brand new sponsor we brought to NASCAR. Brought Phantom Fireworks last year, and now Nutrient Ag Solutions to the whole Xfinity series is awesome. Pretty excited.
And Ross is out in Vegas as well, driving the Chevy Wheel Force car. How big is that for him to be behind the wheel of one of these things? And what kind of information does Chevy try to gather out there with their Wheel Force car?
Well, each manufacturer, let's be clear, each manufacturer gets what they call a Wheel Force car, and you'll see it as you're watching today. You'll see it with all the telemetry on it and things stuck outside of the wheels. And Ross getting to drive that car is huge because just track time, right? Anytime you can get someone on a racetrack, that is key. We've kept our driver Justin Haley driving a late model every chance he could get this winter. He's going to run dirt races. So Ross driving a car at Las Vegas is huge when he gets to go back, because you think about everybody that he's racing, they're not out there driving. He's driving the Wheel Force car and understanding where the bumps are, if it's changed. Even though it might be a little slower than the other cars, he's still getting track time.
All right, so let's break this down by manufacturer. Let's start with Ford. In the Cup Series, they're bringing the Mustang up along with this 2019 rules package that we're going to see. We saw Chevy last year struggle a little bit bringing the Camaro ZL1 to Cup. Do we anticipate the same learning curve for Ford, or does the fact that they're doing this along with this new package, does that kind of level the playing field for them?
That's going to be hard to say, right? Like, I can't sit here and tell you that, hey, it's going to be great that Ford's coming out with a new car this year. I think everybody will go through learning curves with this package, without this package. Will you see Ford dominate like we've seen them dominate at the beginning of last year and throughout the year? Man, I don't think so. I think this package obviously brings them closer together, but also with a new car, or a new body style. I shouldn't say a new car, new body style coming out. It's probably the best time to do it instead of just having the same package that they had last year. Now with this, they can work on it. They can develop it into what we're going to see in the future in NASCAR. So it's probably the best time. I don't know that it'll come out and dominate like they did last year.
All right, let's talk about the Chevy side of things. Jimmy Johnson was out there, new crew chief for him this year. Man, you talk about learning about this new package. He gets to learn with his new crew chief, Kevin Meendering. How big is this test for Jimmy?
You see me smiling because this guy's going for 8. Okay, and if you don't know what Jimmy Johnson's doing, he's going for 8 championships. That's huge. That is huge in anything. Super Bowls, anything you want to do, 8. Jimmy Johnson will take this year with these new packages everywhere that he goes, because they're a little different everywhere, and he will just grab him by the arm, and he'll teach his brand new crew chief, and they will learn them. And I feel like Jimmy Johnson's going to be somebody that can control a race like he used to. If you think about it, Jimmy Johnson used to control races. He didn't any in 2018. I feel like he'll get back. He'll lead some races. They'll make mistakes together. Jimmy will rise up and be a leader. It's somebody fresh. It's just like he's a rookie again. Jimmy Johnson's going to show everyone he can win 8, I feel.
How big is something like this for communication and learning someone's tendencies on the radio, off the radio? Because we are going to be in drafting practice later, so it's going to be a little bit more high stress out there. You're not going to be able to make a mistake in drafting practice without some big consequences. So to be able to go through some scenarios out there with a brand new crew chief on the box, I mean, that's got to be beneficial.
Huge. It's huge. And I'll break down what we did at Atlanta on Monday with Justin Haley. He has a new crew chief, and just him working with them, making all the laps, all the guys getting back into routine. That is key. Each and every week we go to the racetrack. Once you get going to the racetrack, they call it racetrack legs, racetrack body. It's the same thing if you can go test during the winter. It is huge to be able to go out, learn what your driver's saying, understand what the race car's doing, run some sim laps. It makes, when you get back to Vegas or when you get to Atlanta, a lot easier because you've already had a test. Daytona's Daytona. They're down there a long time. It's kind of low key. It's drafting. So that's Daytona. But when you get to an oval like a mile and a half, cookie cutter racetrack, something like that, it's game on, man. You got 55 minutes to get your car right. Now you got 2 days to work on how you explain your race car. What do you tell your crew chief? What does he understand you're saying? If I'm loose, is it a 10 loose or is it a 1 loose? They get to understand that and make changes it makes a mistake, and goes the wrong way, then they can go the other way. They'll learn a lot.
All right, Chris, now for people who may have joined us a little bit later, give us a brief explanation of what we got going on the monitor behind us, what's going on track right now, and what can we expect later on throughout the day.
Well, it's awesome that NASCAR and NASCAR.com does this, and you can sit at work. If you work on your computer all the time, you can watch what's going on at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. But what they're working on is they're working on a brand new package that NASCAR and the teams work together with to come up with to create better racing, more passes, things that are going to make the racing better. They worked on stage racing. We had some that liked it, some that didn't, but I feel like that helped the races throughout the entire race. It broke it up. Now what they're working on is trying to create passes coming down to the checkered flag, coming down to the green and white checkered flag at the end of the stages, something that you can run side by side with. If the guys can run side by side, the guys like Ty Dillon that we see on the monitor right now will take his race car and maybe gain 5-10 spots and be able to race with the guys like the Kyle Busches and the Kevin Harvicks and learn faster. Because Ty's a young guy, he's up and coming. He hasn't done the best. I'm sure that he sits at home thinking, how can I run with those guys? This package might allow him to go out and draft with the guys and maybe pass those guys, get some stage points, and have a shot at making the playoffs. It might be somebody that's trying to get into playoffs that this package can do it because you're going to be able to pass. That's what they're working on. We know, I keep saying this, we know that they're going to have some tweaks and things are going to change, but the Aero Ducts, the bigger spoiler, the less horsepower it's all together. It's not to slow the race cars down. I want to be very clear. It's to make the racing better. It's not to just slow it down. NASCAR didn't just say, hey, let's go slow the race cars down. That's going to help us. It's to make the racing better.
Now, we also have Jessica Ruffin. She's roaming the garage as well, so we'll hear from her a little bit later. So we're going to hear from drivers. We're going to hear what they're feeling, what that steering wheel feels like, what the feel of that car is from their perspective as well. But you mentioned guys like Ty Dillon. Somebody that I think about here is Ryan Preece. He's going in that 47 car. He's also out here testing. I think about what A.J. Allmendinger was able to do All-Star Weekend in that 47. I think he won the first stage of the Open to make it into the All-Star race, or one of the stages. He was out there up front. What does it do for a program like JTG? What does it do to have them bring in a guy like Ryan Preece, who saw a lot of success last year in the Xfinity series when he was with Gibbs? I mean, that seems like that marriage is really going to benefit from this.
Well, absolutely, and you're right. A.J. Allmendinger getting into the All-Star race, but Bubba Wallace. We think about Bubba Wallace led a lot of laps, but somebody like Ryan Preece, he can jump in that car. He can lean on Chris Buescher, his teammate. Hey, what did you feel when you were at the All-Star race? But he also understands race cars. Ryan Preece, to me, is one of the most underestimated race car drivers because he understands racing. He understands what this is going to do to his race cars, and he knows that, hey, he might not be the fastest guy out here, but he can come back to the shop and say, hey, guys, this is what I feel like we need to do, and be able to help them make their cars better. JTG just has to believe in him, and they're changing some things around inside their shop and moving into Hendrick Motors and stuff like that. So they just have to believe in Ryan Preece and understand that he knows race cars, whether it's a Cup race car, a modified Xfinity, because we've seen him win Xfinity races. So they just have to believe in him, and he's going to be a factor once we get into the deep of the season. Once we get into the summertime and he understands these race cars, because we gotta remember, he's like Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace going into his second year. Bubba didn't run that well, He always talked about on his social media, haters and people talking about how well I'm running. But at Bristol, he went up and took the lead and showed everyone that he still can drive. And Bubba will be better this year because he's got his second year. So with Ryan Preece being his first year, he'll lean on all his help, and you'll see him be a contender at some of these races. And I think you'll see him make mistakes at some of these races. So I like that this package is coming out for those rookie guys and the guys that are running for the Rookie of the Year.
Now, when we were in our last break, everybody on Twitter was asking us, when are they going to draft? When are they going to draft? 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's when we hit those 25-lap drafting runs. So what do you expect to learn? I mean, there's 15 of these cars out there, so that's a pretty good group of cars. 25 laps to get the drafting figured out. You're smiling pretty big right now, so what do you expect to see during those 25 laps? Are all 15 of them going to go out there at the same time? Are they going to dip their toe in the water? What would you tell your driver?
Well, before I answer that, I love social media, right? I love people talking to me about, what's going on and what I say. And you're right. What are we going to see with the drafting? So just keep tweeting us, and I'm telling you that what we're going to see with the drafting, yes, we didn't see a longer than a 10-lap run. I've seen someone ask me about, hey, what are we going to see after 10 laps? That's what we don't know. That's why NASCAR is having this test right now. No one can tell us, hey, we're going to see cars moving all around and things happening. But I feel like what we're going to see is the guys trying passes, right? What do we need to do to make that pass? How are we going to run behind somebody? What's going to happen when they're out front? I know Clint Boyer and Brett Griffin is coming along and going to be a spotter for us this year on the 10 car. I've talked to him about what's going on out there. And like you said, yeah, it's single car runs. It's boring, but when they go drafting, what are we going to see? And Clint's going to put it out there, and he's going to tell us what he thinks about it. He's not going to hold anything back. So if we can get a word in with him, I'll guarantee you he'll explain what he thinks. But what will we see after 10 laps? I'm really curious to see what's going to happen also. I feel like it's still going to be good racing. It's still going to be side by side, and you're going to understand that somebody can go and pass for the lead.
Let's talk about Chip Ganassi Racing quickly as well. The addition of Kurt Busch. Kurt is out here testing this package at his home racetrack, Las Vegas. They didn't send Kyle Larson out here. They sent Kurt Busch. They sent the veteran. How big is that for that organization to have a guy who's been around as long as Kurt Busch has been around get behind the wheel of their race car and tell them what he's feeling. I mean, he's driven just about everything in the Cup Series since 2001.
Yeah, well, I don't think they looked at it as a veteran, because Kyle Larson is a veteran, right? He's been there a long time. What I think they looked at is what we just talked about. He needed some time with his crew chief, his team. This is his first year over there. He needed time with them. So, but also he knows what Stuart Haas did for the last couple of years, right? He just ran at a place that won a lot of races and almost won a championship and was just dominant last year. So he can come out and say, hey, this car doesn't drive like what I drove last year. Or he can say, it drives just like it, and we need to work on this. I feel like that's why they picked Kurt Busch to go out to Vegas to run this test.
All right, we just saw his brother Kyle up there. Everybody thinks that's going to be the guy everybody's got to catch regardless what we run. A guy like Kyle Busch, what do you anticipate his season with this 2019 rules? But you can't keep that guy down. Doesn't matter what you do.
It's that gift that was at Bristol where he just shook his head. You're going to see that a lot, I feel, because he's going to get passed and he's going to get frustrated. But I'm telling you, you're not going to keep that guy down. You're right. One of the best race car drivers that has been in a race car, in recent, and he will make everybody better. He will work hard to get everybody better, and he'll tell you if they're not. If this package is hurting JGR, he will tell you, but also you're not going to keep him down, and he'll figure out a way to win.
We talked about this yesterday during production days. He was one of the first guys we talked to about this package, and he kind of wore it as a badge of honor of having something else to adapt to. He gets in trucks, he gets in Xfinity cars, he gets in Cup cars. Heck, he even goes and runs a snowball derby, and he competes, he learns, and he wins. He's looking forward to the challenge. Is that bad news for these guys that he's chomping at the bit to get this thing down?
Definitely. You're right. We see him go run a snowball derby. We seen him run a late model race and actually get beat last weekend, at Watermelon Speedway. So I'm telling you, when he gets a challenge, he's going to try to dominate, right? And Kevin Harvick did the same thing. You probably haven't talked to Kevin much about it, but I'm telling you, Kevin is that quiet guy now, even though he used to be called Hothead. He's that quiet guy now, and he is going to just take it. Rodney Childress, he's a racer. He come from the same background I did, and those guys will try to figure out what is going on, how to make it better. After they race Vegas, they will say, okay, guys, we missed it here, or they might be the guys that goes out and dominates, that gets out front like the Penske cars do at Daytona and Talladega. They might be those guys. They might, we don't know yet. But I'll guarantee you we'll get a little bit of hint of it when they start drafting at 2 p.m. Eastern.
What's the process like for some of these, next level crew chiefs, the Paul Wolfs, the Cole Perns, this Adam Stevens, the Rodney Childress? What's the process when this rules package is announced? You have to think about it ASAP. So what's the process for some of these crew chiefs behind the scenes preparing for something even just like a 2-day test?
Trying to learn, trying to go to the wind tunnel. They probably spend a lot of time in the wind tunnel, third shift, 11 to 7 in the morning, trying to learn and understand what's going on with the Aero Ducts. Looking at our Xfinity races that we raced, watching that race on their big TV, understanding how the guys passed, what made a difference. Most of those guys you mentioned has an Xfinity team. So they were able to go and grab their notes and say, okay, what did those guys do to make their cars better? Put that stuff in the wind tunnel and try to make it better. So when they unloaded these tests and when they unload at the racetrack, they already have cut out a bunch of unknowns, right? So that's what those guys did. They went back to school. Even though they're out of school, they went back to school to try to figure out what made their Xfinity cars so fast.
All right, Jessica Ruffin on the ground. She's got a veteran herself. Jessica, who are you standing by with, and what's he telling you?
Hey guys, I'm here with David Reagan, driver of the Front Row Motorsports Ford. David, you made a couple of runs here at Las Vegas, so what are your initial thoughts having in the Rhodes package?
I was really surprised the first couple of runs. The car, it felt good. We've been on the simulator a lot already. It's amazing the technology that the teams and manufacturers have. We're able to change the engine package, the downforce package. We're able to put those models into a simulator and make runs over the course of December and January. When we get here, it feels really close. So our teams have done a great job trying to prepare and plan for this test. And it's so important to kind of work out some of the bugs in our race cars, but then there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how our cars are going to drive in a pack around a bunch of other cars when the track takes some rubber later on today. So the track was pretty green this morning. I felt like the speeds were pretty comparable to what I thought they should be. they're only a second or two slower than what we had last year. So I'm sure those speeds will be a little faster when multiple cars get close to each other and eliminate some of the drag with the high spoiler. But yeah, our Ford Mustang is running well so far. There's several other Ford teams here today, and looking forward to making a lot of laps.
Now, you talked about some of the unknowns, some of the changes with this 2019 rules package. You know, you mentioned the spoiler, the splitter, the horsepower, significant decrease there. So what do you think is the biggest adjustment for you guys heading to the rest of the day?
You know, I think just understanding what our race cars need to go a little faster and still drive good. Obviously, anytime you change multiple rules, you're going to have new problems to work through. And so, you know, we know what our cars need to go faster, to hold it wide open around the racetrack. But once you start getting into dirty air, you know, low fuel, older tire situations, your balance changes, and you have different problems that you're really not even aware that you're going to have, or maybe that were different in years past. So today is not about, you know, how fast can we go and setting a track record. It's more collecting data, understand what we need, so we can go back, and a lot of these teams probably have, you know, a test car or maybe even an Atlanta Motor Speedway car, and so we'll go back and tweak on those cars, and I guarantee you everybody will bring something a little bit better here in a few weeks in Vegas.
Awesome. Well, I know that NASCAR has been a collaborative effort for them, kind of a 2-year process of getting this rules package in the making. So why do you think it's important for NASCAR to constantly be innovating and constantly be trying to think of ways to elevate the racing?
Well, I think you've got to evolve as technology around us evolves, as the car manufacturers, which are a big part of our sport, as they evolve with their components, their body styles, their engines. You know, we have to evolve as a stock car racing series. You know, what we've raced in the last 3 or 4 years, it's a little different than what, you know, what Ford Motor Company and Toyota and Chevrolet, what they're producing, you know, for our fans to drive on the roads to get here. So we've got to work with them, and then technology is always changing. So what was good 3 or 4 years ago, you need to always be making fine-tune adjustments, and then NASCAR has done that with a new engine package, and I think over the next few years you're going to see some more changes in body style, downforce, and even engine combinations.
Awesome. Well, David, I think we have some questions coming in from Studio 3 right now.
Let's hear them.
Hey David, Chris Rice here, back in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wanted to ask you, we talked about throttle and how much gas you're using. Are you able to stay wide open? Are you lifting a lot? What's going on in your single car runs? Tell us, make a lap with us and explain to us what you have compared to what you had last year in 2018.
Yeah, so single car runs, you are able to hold the car wide open, and what that means is you're using no brake, and you're able to stay wide open 100% all the way around the racetrack. And so I think that your minimum speed is very close to what we've had in years past. You know, at a point during the center of the corner in turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you do get that sensation of, you know, a little bit tight, a little bit loose. The car bounces around, and I think you're at that edge, but the problem or the difference is you're not going quite as fast getting into the corner, and you're not leaving the corner quite as fast. So I still think we're going really, really fast right through the center of the corner, and so I think that's where you'll see the difference in who has fast cars and good handling cars once you get into a packed scenario where you have dirty air. Your fuel load is lowered, your tires are getting worn out, because guys will have to start lifting more, and that's going to separate the guys that are going to be able to win the race versus the guys that won't be able to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today and giving us some of your time. We'll let you get back to testing. I know you guys have a lot to unpack with this rules package, a lot to do. Back to you guys in the studio, Jonathan and Chris.
All right, Chris, did he give you the answer you were looking for? Is that kind of what you were thinking was going to happen out here in single car runs?
Well, that backed up what we've been talking about here in the studio, that, you know, they're going to be wide open, that, you know, after a couple of laps, he thinks that they're going to separate, which is key for us to watch and see if it happens. That's something that I've been interested in. And so being able to be wide open and almost feeling that edge that he's talking about, you know, is something that is very interesting to me to, you know, see on the racetrack. Are they on the edge? Can they run side by side? I say that a lot. That's something that I've been interested in to be able to watch here today and know what's going to happen when they come back.
I'm interested in seeing where the passes are going to take place. Are they going to go into the corner trying to pass somebody, or are they going to wait to make their move off of the corner? Because we all talk about the bad word dirty air, but that could be advantageous to these guys. We talk about punching a hole in the air. That's what you want, right? So where do you anticipate passes coming at the end of the straightaway, or maybe coming off of a corner?
That's a good question, but my feel is I'm going to see them pass a lot at the end of the straightaway. You know, I go back and I watch all the races that happen with kind of this package. You know, a lot of passing happened at the end of the straightaway, and things happen after they got that big, what I call that big suck to be able to pull out, you know. So I think they're going to do a lot of passing getting into the corner, which sometimes is not good. But what I think we're really going to see is the top of the racetracks, or the groove that's not preferred, come in sometimes, right? We see Kyle Larson be the first guy to the top of the racetrack and be able to pass cars. I think now what we're going to be able to see is that come in faster. You know, maybe the bottom of the racetrack still have the same speed as the top of the racetrack. And I hope that that's what happens when they get out and draft today, that, you know, you see somebody running around the middle of the racetrack and be able to still maintain with the guy on the inside. So I feel like that hole that's getting punched is going to be key to what happens in the middle of the corner and where the passes are made.
All right, Chris, we're going to lay back for a few minutes, watch the action unfold here on the track, and watch some of these race cars make a few more laps. back into NASCAR Studio 3. If you're just joining us, we are live broadcasting the 2019 rules package test from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Chris Rice here. I'm Jonathan Merriman. We're joined by Jessica Ruffin live in the field, and she's got a Daytona 500 champion she's catching up with. Jessica, what's Austin got to say?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm here with Austin Dillon, driver of the number 3 Chevrolet, who's made a few runs so far here in Las Vegas. You're back with Danny Stockman, but I mean, you guys have so much history together, so how has that been kind of reuniting with him and ahead of the season?
It's great. You know, we're pretty focused today. We got a lot we need to get through. They've come up with a lot of ideas at RCR this year, so we're just trying to go through our test plan, and I think 11 o'clock will get interesting when we all got to line up out there and race around each other.
Awesome. So I know there's a lot of changes to unpack, and I know you guys have only had a few runs to get it done so far. What have you noticed is the biggest adjustment for you on the track?
You know, you still got to balance these race cars. They got to drive good. You know, a lot of people were thinking it was pretty much going to be easy to drive around here, and Bubba came up to me after the second run. He's like, man, I think you still got to drive these things. He's like, yeah, you do. And, you know, we just been kind of working on our balance, and then our aero balance matched with our mechanical balance is going to be really key, you know, just getting that where everything's trimmed out, but it's driving good as well.
Awesome. I think we have a few questions coming in from Studio 3 with Jonathan and Chris Rice.
Hey, Austin, it's Merriman. I want to know how amped up you are to get back to Daytona. We're 18 days away. We got cars on the racetrack. Me and Chris are in here itching to get going for this thing, but 18 days away from pulling that old 3 car out of the museum there in Daytona. You got a new paint scheme, new fire suit. Are you ready to back that thing up when we get to Daytona?
Yeah, that's going to be really special seeing that car come out. And Stockman's been working hard in the offseason so we can go and defend our title. He says this car is better than last year's car, so I'm really pumped about that. You know, we were able to take home a victory with the car last year, obviously. And if we got a faster one this year, it means we should go do it.
All right, I think we got one from Chris Rice now, too.
What's up, Rice?
Hey, man, you know that we ran this package at College Racing with you driving it, and you fared well in it. Obviously, you had a shot to win. You was very aggressive. And do these cars drive a lot like what you had at Indianapolis, or are they different?
It's pretty similar, you know, what we had there in that Xfinity package, but there's a couple small things that are different that we're kind of working through with the pan and different stuff like that compared to what we had last year in Xfinity. But I do think it's going to drive very similar out on the track. I'm interested to see how aggressive we're going to be able to be tucked in behind cars. That'll be the key to it all.
I was going to ask you about the drafting in particular. I know you guys have that first run at 11 o'clock, several more throughout the day. So what is your mindset going in there? What do you think is going to happen?
Just making sure we got our balance where it needs to be so I don't bust my tail here early in this test. You know, it's a pretty key test, so I don't want to do anything stupid right off and just, you know, stay balanced and see if we can learn as much as we can while we're out here.
Awesome. Well, we will let you go and learn even more as you can with Danny Stockman. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
and back
guys.
to you guys in the studio.
All right, Jessica, good stuff there. Chris, you mentioned a great point. You were with him over at College Racing, making sure when you guys were getting ready to run that race with him last year. How did he respond to that? What would you grade him on that Xfinity race last year at Indy?
I'd grade him as an A+. You know, we had 0 practice. Remember, it rained, and we had to come back on Sunday and or Monday. I can't even remember what day we came back and raced that race, but it was cold. But Austin did a great job and contended for a win. He started 32nd, and he drove up to push Daniel Hemrick to a stage win. He drove away from the pack behind him. So I felt like Austin adapted way faster than I anticipated. He came back to the shop. He explained some things that we could do better at College Racing to make our cars better. So I'm telling you, I feel Austin has a little bit in his back pocket. He knows, he gave away a little bit of his secret, that they're going to have to drive well also. You're not just going to be able to trim them out. And what he meant by that, let's explain that a little bit. We watched that every year at Daytona and Talladega, trying to get the car as far out of the air as we can, get that spoiler, that big old spoiler out of the air, and they'll go faster. You can't do that. You're going to have some drag back in it. You're going going to have your car to be able to drive. He talked about that. So I was very impressed when he said that hey man, Bubba Wallace came over and said, man, you're going to still have to drive these cars. That makes me excited for the Kyle Busches and the Kevin Harvicks and those guys to be able to, when it comes race time, don't forget about Joe Logano, our champion from last year. He knows how to drive those cars also. So I'm telling you, it's going to be exciting to watch when it comes 11 o'clock their time, 2 o'clock Eastern time, for us to see what happens. Can someone drive away from it? But Austin gave some good insight.
Talk to me a little bit, because, I mean, our drivers are athletes. They have to be in that car, they have to react, and they have to anticipate. What is this rules package going to do? I mean, we talked about these cars being able to still get away from you. It's going to be a driver's race more than ever, right? I mean, what do you got to do to make sure you stay sharp in the car with this new package?
Well, I think you got to do a lot more studying. You know, we see these drivers. I was watching social media when we were testing Atlanta on Monday. We see these guys working out, and we see everybody studying. I think you're just going to have to do more. They don't have any race other than what the Xfinity Series had last year to be able to study. Now going into 2019, and they don't have anything to study, so they're going to have to run a race, go back and watch that, run that back through their mind. You know, on Saturday night when they're asleep or studying for Sunday's race, they don't know what they need. And I think that's where Kyle Busch excels. I don't know that he needs to do a lot of studying. I think he wakes up in the morning and like, uh-oh, I'm going to win today, and I'm just going to go out and win, you know. And then the Kyle Larsons come along and maybe spoil it, or the Kevin Harvicks. But I don't know that they have anything that they can look at and definitively say, this is what these race cars are going to do, you know, going into the 2019 season, because it's a different season. The points are reset, right? Like when we show up at Daytona, everybody has 0 points. Nobody has any stage wins. Nobody has any wins. So going into 2019, they don't know what to study. This is a great test, and going into Atlanta, Vegas, all those racetracks early on will help them throughout the summertime to figure out what they need.
We talk about Daytona, 18 days away. It's going to be here before.
Don't remind me.
It's going to be here before we know it. I mean, it's an exciting time. We got cars on the track right now, chomping at the bit, ready to get out there. I mean, 2019 is a different animal altogether, but I mean, how big is it going to be for all these guys to try to kick it off right at Daytona?
Well, I think we think every season's bigger than last season, right? And that's in anything you do. I feel like that every year, David Reagan said it, you know, everything's evolving. You know, when you have everything on the racetrack's evolving, so NASCAR has to keep up with that. So we're trying to keep up with our fans and who's watching. And you know, even though we have champions like Jimmy Johnson that's been there, you know, 7 times going for his 8th, we still got to evolve. We still can't just sit still. So even with Jimmy Johnson, new crew chief, Chad Knaus is out. We got to do that in 2019. It's going to be a big, big year.
Now we've talked about Chad and Jimmy, Chad and Jimmy parting ways. Kevin Mindring being on that pit box. I mean, we talked about that communication, but a lot of new things over there at Hendrick Motorsports this year as well. Chad's going over to William Byron, so how big of a benefit will William get from having a 7-time champion crew chief?
Oh my goodness, it's like anything. Like you heard me say, oh my goodness.
The best Christmas present you could get was, hey William, here's Chad.
Boss man walked up to William and probably said, hey, you're going to get Chad Knaus as your crew chief next year. And William probably said, pinch me because I'm sleeping right now. I'm dreaming. That's not true. And it is true. And listen, Jimmy and Chad are still great friends. They were together a long time, but they could grow apart, right? They still going to have arguments. You know, they still going to have problems. Now with William Byron getting Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson can go to William Byron and go, hey, this is what Chad is thinking right now, and help him out, because Jimmy's like the father figure over there now. You know, we looked at Jimmy Johnson years ago with Jeff Gordon, the young guys. Now they're the father figure. They definitely can help William Byron, and he needs to get to where Chase Elliott is quicker. And I feel like with Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson, everybody, what they've done over there, the chemistry is going to click. Their 2nd year on their car, so it's going to be awesome.
Let's talk about the Xfinity Series, how these Xfinity cars race, how this 2019 package will race more similar to that. You know, Chase Elliott, he's got a title in the Xfinity Series. Is it, most advantageous to drivers like him and William Byron over in that HMS stable?
No, and I'll tell I don't feel like that. I really don't. And I'll tell the story that I've always told everyone. I was in the Cup Series for a long time, and I enjoyed it. I was in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. Every division that you go to, from the Xfinity Series to the Cup Series, the fence that you're trying to jump over gets bigger, and it still is going to be big. You still got the best of the best racing. They're the best in the world racing those cars. It's still going to be tough to beat those guys every Sunday.
All right, Chris, I think Jessica Ruffin is standing by with a race car driver who's won a couple races, won a couple championships. No big deal. She's got Jimmie Johnson on tap.
Thanks, Jonathan. Definitely won a couple races, a couple championships. Been around this sport a very long time. Jimmie Johnson, driver of the number 48 Lowe Chevrolet. So
Ally.
You're
so used to saying
I
it.
know, it's a habit. You've been around so long, right?
Yeah.
Ally Chevrolet. So you made a couple runs now. So what are your thoughts heading in?
The car from, obviously we ran this package at the All-Star race, and we are going much faster than we did the All-Star race. So it's nice to have that pace and speed. This track has a lot of grip, so it's an easy flat right now in single car. We're just working through some small changes and trying to get our heights right. There should be a drafting practice at 11 o'clock, so we're kind of preparing for that. But so far, so good.
Now, these are your first laps of 2019 with new crew chief Kevin Mendering. So what's that been like to kind of get some laps in, some reps in with him?
That's been great. And we do have probably 4 or 5 new faces on the 48 team. So to get reps on everyone and get the conversation going and be here at the track, the timing and scoring's going, that puts another level of pressure, layer of pressure on the team. So everybody's doing great, and we're clicking along really well.
Awesome. I think we have some questions coming in from Studio 3 right now.
All right, Jimmy, this is Jonathan Merriman in Studio 3. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? I mean, this 2019 package, we've seen it a little bit last year. What do you anticipate the catch-up time to be between when you guys really start to master this thing? Is it going to be right off the bat at Atlanta, Vegas, or is it going to take a little bit of time?
Yeah, it's... we always look at the West Coast swing during a year and kind of feel like the race in Vegas and California really kind of show who's going to be strong in that first quarter. We're only a few hours into the first test session, but we've got a fast car, and we're probably the fastest one here right now. So great optimism on the Hendrick side, but there's a long way to go, clearly. Daytona is its own animal. I also feel that Atlanta, with the surface that's on that track, it's going to be its own animal. And then the Vegas should be a good kind of marker for where any and every organization is.
All right, I think that's it from the studio. Now, I know you said a lot of optimism with the speed you guys are showing. I know just because of last year, the struggles that Hendrick Motorsports and you guys had, what confidence does that give you going into the year? You have a little bit of an advantage coming in and testing here with your crew chief and your team.
Yeah, it's great to be here and be able to get reps and feel it. And I know my teammates are going to be eager to hear what I have to say and what Kevin has to say from a car setup standpoint. But, last year was a tough year for our company, and this year, with the rules change, we are all back at ground zero and starting over. So, we don't want to live through what we did again last year by any means, but we're kind of on equal footing right now and starting the season all over again.
Awesome. Well, we will let you get back to that. Thank you so much for giving us a chat today.
Thank you, everybody.
Back to you guys in the studio, Jonathan and Chris.
All right, let's go back out to the racetrack. Let's see some of these cars on the track right now. If we can get that up and take a look at these cars on the racetrack. We're going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back a little bit later on this evening. welcome back into NASCAR.com Studio 3 for the live Vegas test 2019 rules package. Chris, we've been watching these cars make some runs out here. We've talked to a few people. What have you learned throughout the course of the day now that we're just about 40 minutes away from drafting practice?
I learned that Jimmy Johnson was excited that his car is fast, and I also learned that you're going to have to drive these race cars. It's not something that's just going to be get all the car out of the air and it's going to go fast. You're still going to have to drive them. So, and I feel that the drivers are very optimistic that this is going to be a good thing for the sport. It's not something that you know everybody's looking down on, or you know, and I've seen positivity through our Twitter feeds, my Twitter feed, that people are liking it. And I think when we get into the drafting here in about 40 minutes, I think that's going to really show us what we're going to see. I've seen some tweets about people, you know, was able to hold the gas all the way wide open for 4 laps straight and then had to start lifting. I talked to Brett Griffin, that's already out there when we were off the air, and he says it's pretty uneventful, but it's going to be fun to watch when they do go draft.
Now, we talked to Austin Dillon a little bit. He talked about the on-throttle time, but he said he talked to Bubba Wallace and said that you still got to drive these things. So, I mean, it's a downforce package, but, I mean, 550 horsepower is still a lot of horsepower for these big, heavy cars.
Yeah, it definitely is. And just the horsepower going away doesn't mean that it's, you know, hey, we're going to slow them down. They go through the corner faster than what they did last year there because they're wide open. You know, the gas pedal's wide open. They're trying to go through the corner faster. We see that with Xfinity cars a lot. They're down on horsepower compared to the 2018 Cup cars. They go through the corner a lot faster than what the Cup cars do sometimes, and that creates havoc for the Xfinity cars. You know, we've seen the Las Vegas race getting ready to lead into the playoffs for the Xfinity Series, and there was a lot of drama that went on in that race. You know, a lot of passing. We know that Ross Chastain won that race in the 42 car for Ganassi, but it was still a lot of drama. You know, it's just when you take horsepower away, it's not, okay, we're just going to slow them down. It's not that. They're trying to balance it between how do we pass, how do we do something different, how do we make the racing exciting.
I know everybody's looking forward to drafting in just about 40 minutes, but take me through your process as a crew chief on a test day. There's a lot to be done when the garage opens before you even get out on the racetrack, and even with these single car runs. Take me through your morning. What would your morning have been like if you would have been testing in Vegas today?
Well, with the way I treat myself now, I would have got up and ate some oatmeal. I would have probably laid out my notes, looked at what our test plan was. Our engineers had driven a test plan of what we needed to do, what we needed to work on, what we had learned at the simulator back in Charlotte or at our shop. And I would have looked at that test plan thinking, okay, the weather's here. I would have checked the weather to make sure that we're not going to have any rain, snow, sleet, anything like that. And then I would have, as soon as we got to the racetrack, got with the guys and said, hey, we have to treat this like this is a one-day happy hour session. And what I mean by that is you only have this one day to get your car great. So we're working as hard as we can for 8 hours, just as hard as we can go to get through this test plan. And then we would drive the test plan. When the driver got there, say, okay, do not get frustrated with us. Sometimes we're going to be good, sometimes we're going to be bad, but just work with us and stick to the objective of the test plan. And then we would have started on the test plan. And obviously the first couple of runs, you heard Jimmy Johnson talk about it, that they were trying to get the travels right or the heights right. That takes a minute. So then you start working on that test plan and just working as hard as we can. Now we're getting ready to do some drafting, so that might change everything for the second half of the test.
All right, I know you were really antsy wanting to talk about qualifying earlier in the day. How's this going to affect qualifying? What do you think we're going to see with drivers trying to lay down a fast speed?
We've seen this with the Gander Mountain Truck Series, right? We've seen that where they drafted a lot. You see it with the Xfinity cars, we draft a lot. You're going to see that about everywhere that we do this, right? Like, we're going to see people draft a lot come qualifying. They're going to be sitting at the end of pit road waiting to the last minute to be able to go out and make that lap, right? We are going to see some drafting happen when it comes qualifying. And maybe the fastest car doesn't sit on the pole. The fastest single lap car doesn't sit on the pole. The guy that gets the best sniff or that can pull up to somebody else, gets the pole.
Now, Xfinity car is also out in Vegas as well. I'm looking at the number 18 Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity car. Supra making its debut this year, so that's it's always cool. We talked about the Mustang coming to the Cup Series. We have Toyota's version of the sports car going to the Xfinity Series. So, I mean, these cars are getting, just like the competition, the cars are getting younger and cooler too. So, I mean, how cool is it to be able to race against, you know, a brand's sports car?
Well, it is definitely different, but what that does for me as we run Chevrolets, I'm like, oh my goodness, we got to go out and we got to do that. We got to get our car to where it looks like theirs, right? So, you know, it's something that everybody chases each and every year. What's next? What's coming next? Who's got the advantage on their cars, their body styles? So, you know, Chevrolet also changed theirs to make theirs in the Xfinity Series look a little different also. But the Supra, it's a cool looking race car. I'm really curious to see how it races.
All right, so as we approach Daytona, let's shift from Vegas a little bit. As we look at the Cup Series as a whole, and when we approach Daytona, what do you anticipate? What are you looking forward to see? Who do you think is going to have a breakout year? Because there's been a lot of moving pieces over the offseason. Silly season was just about as silly as we've seen in a while.
Yeah, and you talk about breakout season. I think it's time for Kyle Larson just to step up and win that championship. I think it's time for him to get to where he needs to be to contend each and every week. You know, we watched him make it to the playoffs and not fare so well throughout them, but he just didn't. He wasn't that guy when it came time to go out and win that championship. It's time to brush his shoulders off, go out and win that championship, because he knows how to win, right? Like, they understand how to win. Now they have a veteran over there with Kurt Busch. They don't have an Xfinity team taking away a little bit of that from him. So now it's time for Kyle Larson to go out and win that championship. Time for him to step up and win the championship.
All right, we talked about RCR a little bit earlier. Let's talk about Daniel Hemrick a little bit. He's bringing back the 8. A lot of people are excited about that. That Kannapolis connection as well with him going to race for Richard Childress, Dale Earnhardt Sr. obviously from Kannapolis as well. Let's talk about Hemrick and what are his expectations. He's obviously in the Rookie of the Year battle right there with Ryan Preece, with Matt Tifft and Tanner Berryhill.
Yeah, so you know, Daniel Hemrick's a good friend of mine. I brought him when I was at NTS. He raced with us over there, and I spent a lot of time with Daniel Hemrick. Daniel Hemrick's a racer. I felt like he made the RCR Xfinity program better. You know, he never won that race. He never stepped out and won that race. But the thing about Daniel Hemrick, what he's going to do for RCR, he's going to make that race cars better. You know, with Danny Stockman being with Austin Dillon and Danny Stockman having a connection with both of those drivers will definitely just help that entire group. But Daniel Hemrick definitely will make that team better. He's a racer. He studies it. He doesn't quit. If something's wrong, he stays engaged. He figures out what needs to be next. The thing he's going to have to do is buckle down and know these races are long, and we got to figure out how to make passes and win that race, right? Like, he could always run in the top 2 or 3 in the Xfinity Series. Got to figure out how to close that race. Once he does that, he's going to make that whole organization in Welcome, North Carolina better, I promise you.
Now, as a whole in the organization, let's talk about just the youth over there on that RCR campus. Let's not forget that Richard Petty Motorsports, they're also over there. You have Austin Dillon, young guy, Daniel Hemrick, young guy. Future's looking bright over in Welcome.
It definitely is. And now, you know, with the 13 car being up there with Ty Dillon, that's a whole nother one. So we have like a whole fleet of race cars in Welcome, North Carolina that you can pick from. So they are very young, but RCR, just think about it, this is their 50th year. And everything you see at their shop is gold because it's their 50th year. They know how to race. Richard Childress is dedicated to make his race cars better, to get back to victory lane, to figure out how to be a contender each and every weekend. And maybe this new package falls right into their fold to be able to go out and win and be in the top 5 each weekend.
Who else are you keeping your eye on in the Cup Series this year?
Well, you know somebody I always like, and I love the way he carries himself, Ryan Blaney. I feel like we always forget about him because he's kind of quiet, but then you get to know him, he's kind of funny, and he hangs out, and he's just himself. I think Ryan Blaney's going to be your guy come out of Penske. Brad Keselowski has done a great job of mentoring those two guys, right? Like he has done an awesome job of just not really taking a back seat, but not being jealous about those guys. If they're in it to win it, he's in it with them. He knows what the goal is, and he understands how to get better and better and better each week. And if that takes taking those guys, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and making them better, he'll do it. So I really like what Ryan Blaney's going to do this year, I feel, I think that's going to be great for that team.
All righty, I think Jessica Ruffin, she's got one of those young guys out there, Daniel Hemrick, live in Las Vegas. Jessica, what's Daniel have to say about what he's felt behind the wheel today?
Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, I'm here with Daniel Hemrick, who is not testing today, but he's with his teammate Austin Dillon, kind of taking notes, sitting there in the garage with him. And you've got a lot of new this season. You know, you're coming into the Monster Energy Series and all of this new stuff going on. What's it like for you to be able to sit here and kind of just take it all in before the season starts?
You know, I was actually telling Luke Lambert last night that me being here and seeing it from this point of view, I think will actually help me as a driver and understand this package, being able to see this point of view. So it's a lot of new things going on for me, you know, a new group. But really, on this 8 team, I'm the only new thing getting plugged in. So for us to come out here together and really focus on what these race cars need to be good, to race good throughout the course of the next couple of weeks, for everybody really get their bearings wrapped around them. So it's good for me to be out here to participate the best I can.
Now, I know you're not behind the wheel, but I know you've been sitting there with Austin, like I said, and just kind of taking it all in. So what are some of the things you've learned just from afar? You know,
it's honestly a lot of what we thought, you know, from the driver's seat. What the driver wants and the team wants sometimes aren't exactly the same thing. So it's up to us to really dive in and figure out what the package needs. And so far, you know, we know handling is going to be a thing. It's probably showing up a little bit more than what we even expected this package to. We thought it'd be a lot of easy, wide open time, but what's that risk versus reward on how much straight line speed does your race car have? So you can see a lot of different cars have a lot of different agendas today. With our guys having the fleet of cars we have, obviously with Ty and then Bubba in the 43, it gives us options and the ability to move and change and do different things and different test plans in a day like today. So a lot of stuff going on that hopefully we can at lunchtime kind of sit down and diagnose which direction we want to go.
Awesome. Now you are moving into the number 8 Chevrolet this year, going into the Monster Energy Series, your debut as a full-time driver in the series coming up in just a few weeks, you know, and your teammate Austin Dillon, you know, he's had some success at Daytona, right? So how do you feel going in?
I feel good. You know, it's you know, that's something you dream about as a kid, is trying to have your opportunity to go be a part of the Great American Race, and I finally get to do that. It's so humbling and rewarding, honestly, not only for me, but for anybody that ever gave me a shot and gave me the opportunity to drive a race car throughout the course of my career or my lifetime. You know, short track racing, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to actually be where I'm at today. So looking forward to going down to Daytona and just enjoying the ride and really living in the moment down there throughout the 10 days or so. And nothing else, just not take it for granted and enjoy it while I'm there.
Awesome. Daniel Hemrick looking to learn as much as he can this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and then before heading into Daytona for his full-time debut in the Monster Energy Series.
Chris Rice, obviously we know each other well, and you're a very thankful person, right? And I know you're very thankful for this ride and what you're doing. I just talked about how well you're going to do and making our race cars better. And I say ours because you have driven our race cars to be better. So my question is, you've ran this package quite a bit last year. Do you think that what you learned in the Xfinity Series will translate to what those guys are doing, and can you make them better by just watching?
You know, obviously I like to think so. Being in a similar packages like you talked about, Chris, in the Xfinity side of things, it definitely is translating here as we run more and more laps, or as I watch them run more and more laps here today. So I think being on this side of it, kind of give my input, and Austin can talk about his feedback, and I can put that into the terms on this point of view. Like, okay, what he's saying is this, because when you're tucked up, these cars change and the air does this. So being able to have that both sides of the fence, I think, for the crew chiefs and engineers to really dive in. This is not something that our teams really get a chance to really dive into throughout a regular race week. So I like to think I'm adding my part to the deal, and hopefully it proves.
Great. So talk a
Awesome. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for...
Talk a little
Just
bit
kidding.
about your...
You're not done, Chris?
No, I wanted to talk a little bit about his hat. You have a hat on that a lot of people know about, but you're not set, you know, it's not you. Who is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so man, Bubba. I felt like a cloudy day here. I thought it was going to be more sun, so I had to protect my face, but there's no better hat than wear the old Bubba Wallace hat, and he always gives me a hard time about it, so I figured I'd support him.
Awesome. I love the relationships in the garage, you guys, the camaraderie, just anything like that. It's so cool to see.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for your time. We really appreciate you giving us a chat. Good luck today, and good luck with your debut with Daytona.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Look forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
Chris, he's out there supporting Bubba Wallace's 2 grassroots racers coming up through the Legends Cars ranks. How cool is it to see, young talent who competed out there on the short track there at Charlotte Motor Speedway, out here testing, Cup cars and being part of a real big innovation effort by NASCAR.
Oh, it's huge, and as we see it, everybody that comes through some sort of racing, right? And we watch it year in and year out, but watching Daniel Hemrick gives me cold chills, and understanding what and how he got to where he's at, from his support group, everybody that helps him, his wife and everyone else helps him. It's just awesome. But just watching these cars on a racetrack just excites me, as y'all can tell. But this has been exciting to watch, but here in just a little while, we're going to watch some drafting. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of time to watch some of this while we get ready for the drafting side of it. So enjoy it as we get ready for this drafting.
everybody. Welcome back into NASCAR.com Studio 3 for the 2019 test at Vegas Motor Speedway. New rules package. Chris Rice here. Jonathan Merriman joining, as well as Jessica Ruffin live in the field. She's getting ready to catch up with Ty Dillon.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm here with Ty Dillon, who's made about 10 runs, I think you said, here at Las Vegas so far, getting ready to go into the drafting portion in just a few minutes. What has your day been like so far? What have you guys learned?
We've been really busy with our Geico Camaro, just trying to figure out this new package. Quite a bit different style of driving inside the car, and here in about 10 minutes it's going to ramp up, and we're really going to learn what we came here for, and that's the drafting and what the cars do in the pack. So we've been just working on getting some feel and some speed in our car, which we have this time around, and looking forward to the next couple hours of what drafting practice brings.
Do you have any idea what that's going to bring? I know a lot of these drivers have talked about the anticipation of this drafting session and several throughout the day, but any idea what it's going to happen?
I'm not sure. I think we're all going to figure it out all at once. I'll just have a closer view of what you guys have, but it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be hopefully what all the fans are looking for: more excitement, more passing. And I'm going to be looking to be aggressive just like I would be in a race, just to fill this package out. So my team and my crew chief and I have all kind of made that agreement, like we need to figure this out first before it starts paying points.
Yeah, that tight racing, that back-to-back hard racing, I know that's what we've been trying to get with this package, and I think that's what we'll see at 11 o'clock. But I think we have some questions in the studio for you.
Well, Ty, I know that you haven't raced this particular package, but you have been able to see what our Xfinity cars did last year, and Austin, your brother, has, and Daniel Hemrick, your teammate. So what do you go about studying or trying to figure out how to make your car better? I know you're going to know a lot here in about 10 minutes, but what do you do before you even get there to figure out how to make your car better?
Yeah, I think going back and watching some of those Xfinity races and even the All-Star race, even the package, even though the package is different among the different races that we've ran, there's a lot to be learned there with the style of racing is all pointed in the same direction with a tighter group, more pack racing, more moves up front. So being able to go back and watch those races and studying some downforce scans and things that we have technology to be able to look at as drivers. We're becoming more engineers now as the sport and the world goes towards technology. So are we as drivers. We got to sharpen our skills with what we study.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris, for that question. And thank you, Ty, for giving us some of your time today. We'll let you get back and get in that drafting session like we've all been anticipating. Thanks, guys.
Let's talk a little bit about Ty Dillon. I mean, a guy he's buying his time there at Germain, another race team that really can benefit from this 2019 package.
Well, absolutely. And, we talked about races inside of races, Cody Ware, those guys, Premium Motorsports, Ross Chastain races the Cup Series. But Ty Dillon, I want to give a little bit of shout out to Ty Dillon because he has Austin Dillon, his brother, that won the Daytona 500, right? So now your brother's won the Daytona 500. He's super excited for him, but now you got to go out and race him, and you got to go out and try to do better than what Ty Dillon or what Austin Dillon did. So Ty has taken that, and he's going to say, I'm going to be better this year. You heard him talk about, hey, we need to figure it out. We need to get speed in our cars. I've watched Ty through growing up, and you could tell he was kind of beat down last year. He was like, how can I get speed out of my race cars? I talked to him at Richmond. He says, I qualify 30th every week. I want to make my race cars better. I want to figure it out. And he took a lot of this wintertime. I've seen him on a simulator a lot. I've seen him studying a lot. So I feel like this year, Ty's going to make that 5-6 positions further up and maybe can be a contender at some of the races, because in the Xfinity Series, we've seen him at Bristol, racing well. We've seen him in Kentucky racing well. So the kid can do it. Now, this package might complement him to be able to be faster.
He talked about being aggressive. And do you want your guy to go out there and be the first one to kind of start cutting up and trying to make moves and stuff in this practice? Because it's a 2-day show here. If you wreck your race car early on, I mean, how do you judge? If you're a crew chief, how do you put the reins on a guy that just wants to go out there and do it?
You don't. You want them to go out and be aggressive today, and you want them to learn. You don't want them to mess up in the first 5 laps, right? You don't want them to do something crazy in that, but you want them to be aggressive today and learn what their car needs, because if you're not aggressive, you don't know what the real racing is going to be like. You want them to go at it, go as hard as you can, figure out what you need, and once you figure that out, then you can make your race car better. But if you don't put it to the limit, you don't know where you're at. So yes, I want them to go as hard as they can. It's just a test, everyone. It's just a test. You hear it on the radio every day. It's just a test. Go out and make it and go hard at it.
All right, 7 or 8 minutes, we're going to start drafting. So after compiling all the information that we know, all the information that they have told us, that Jessica's relayed back to us, how are you feeling heading into this thing? What do you expect to see as we move through that 25-lap drafting practice?
Well, what I expect to see is Jimmy Johnson leading the pack, because he's talked about how fast his car is. So I expect that. I expect Jimmy Johnson to go out and show that. But then Kyle Busch, those guys, and then I expect those trailers that you can see in the infield to be slap full of people. Everybody at the race shops watching this live show to figure out, okay, what do we need? What is guys doing? How are they making their moves? So I'm expecting to see some very aggressive moves, some side-by-side racing, but also what happens after lap 10, okay? What goes on with the tire, the Goodyear tire? What is going to happen, and can we keep the throttle down? Can we keep the draft together, or the guys together running side by side? That's what we're going to see, and we're going to be able to talk about, and what happens to these race cars, why they can't stay side by side. They're either going to be loose, or their car's going to take off and go up the racetrack. They're going to either be pushing. So we'll be able to see that here shortly.
All right, let's talk about these race cars. What's one thing you notice about that one?
Well, the one thing I noticed about that one, it's all black with white letters.
All of them are like that, except for Jimmy's.
Except for Jimmy. So Freddie Kraft, he was on Bubba Wallace's spotter, Freddie Kraft. He tweeted out, he said, whoa, this is going to be fun. At 11 o'clock our time, 2 o'clock East Coast time, we're getting ready to have 15 of black and white, but black cars with white numbers. It's going to be tough to spot those cars. I mean, you think about it. That car, the black and white with white letters, looks just like somebody else. How you gonna know which one's yours? That's gonna be crazy.
That's what I'm at. You guys paying spotters double time in this Vegas test?
Maybe we'll spot from here. We'll just tell them, hey, you look clear. Go ahead and turn left.
Yeah, who knows which car they're in? But in all seriousness, I mean, if we're out here drafting for the first time, those guys really got to pay attention on that roof.
Well, they do, and I think about spotters a lot, and I think having a good spotter or a great spotter is very key. They can save you a lot of money, because they can either get you in a wreck or not get you in a wreck. When we were talking to Justin Haley, our driver that's going to drive the 11 car, he was very adamant that he's worked with Kevin Hamlin for years, and he really wanted Kevin Hamlin to be a spotter. And that's something that you always let the driver pick, because you want that driver and that spotter to have a great communication, whether it's, they've always worked together, and the spotters are going to have to be key, because you watch this car going around a racetrack right now, where that camera's at, it's on top where the spotters are. See, look, you can't tell what that car is going into the corner. That's really tough. Then they drive off of that corner. Then they go away. I can't even tell what car that is. So the spotter's going to have to use binoculars. They're going to have to be very key on what car is theirs. I'll guarantee you, it's teams in the garage right now. If the garage cam can see it, I bet you they're putting tape on roof rails and making sure their car is different than everybody else, is trying to be able to see their car over the next one.
All right, and meanwhile, this is an 80, 90-inch monitor, and we can't tell who's going into what turn on that thing. But 5 minutes away from drafting practice, I feel like I'm counting down to the ball dropping.
I was thinking the same thing. 5 minutes, everyone.
5 minutes away. We should have got a countdown clock going on. But no, I mean, this is exciting. We're going to see what 2019 has in store, a little sample size here. So, I mean, just any more thoughts before we get into the actual drafting practice?
No, they're going to run, I think, a couple of these 25-lap runs, right? And we've seen this, NASCAR do this a couple of times, and I think we will prevail. They'll probably run these 25-lap runs. They'll get out of their cars. All the drivers will convene with NASCAR, because it's a bunch of NASCAR officials out there, and they'll talk about it. Okay, so, hey, what do we have to do? What can we make it better? We see the cars already lining up, getting ready for it. So the ball's getting ready to drop. I don't know if you're going to say 3, 2, 1 and green flag, but they're all lining up, and we see 2 experienced drivers out there first. Brad Keselowski.
2 Fords.
And 2 Fords. Brad Keselowski and Ryan Newman want to see what those cars have in store. Ryan Newman going to a brand new team at Roush Fenway. We haven't talked much about Roush Fenway. It's time for him to step up and get better. So they hired Ryan Newman to try to help him to be better. So yeah, this is key right here to see what what the cars are going to have speed in the pack.
Let's talk about manufacturers. Are you working closely with your, Team Chevy teammates, your Ford Performance teammates, or your TRD teammates? Is it that mindset when we go into this drafting practice, or is it you just line up and go?
You get in this draft, you line up and go. I don't care. All them cars look black with white numbers on them right now. So no, you line up and you go and you try as hard as you can. I will bet that we watch Kyle Busch make some pretty aggressive moves. Clint Boyer is going to make some pretty aggressive moves. If we could listen, on the NASCAR.com app every weekend, I love listening, especially on a weekend that the competition's really close together. You listen to all different people. In mine, I really like to listen to Brett Griffin and Clint Boyer because Clint Boyer doesn't care. He'll tell you what he's thinking, but Brett will speak back at him, and it's just, I wish we could listen today because that's going to be exciting because this is the first time the spotters got back on the roof in 2019 also. So don't forget about that. The spotters are out there. A lot of them went and done a Rolex race last weekend, but that's different. Now they're side-by-side racing in this draft is getting ready to get exciting.
All right, 2 minutes. We're going to lay back a little bit, let this build up. We'll be back and talk about drafting at Las Vegas. Hello everyone, welcome into NASCAR.com Studio 3, the 2019 Rules Package Test at Las Vegas Motor Speedway live. The cars are rolling off now for a 25-lap drafting session, Chris. We've been anticipating this all day long.
I'm pumped, and I'm going to talk real fast because I want you guys to watch it. It is so exciting to see what this is going to hold. Don't forget, everyone, this is the first time it's been on a racetrack, so you never know what we might see. So I'm pretty pumped. Jonathan, I'm going to go watch this.
All right, they're getting up to speed now. We're going to lay off a little bit, let you guys just watch. All right, Chris Rice, you're chomping at the bit to talk about what you're seeing. Tell us what's going on right now, especially with the 95, 14, and 3. We saw a good battle right
We saw a great battle, and what we're watching, we're still seeing single file racing right here. And the guys are trying to figure it out, but we did talk to Ty Dillon. Oh, as he gets in, almost into the 6, and his car had an aero push right there, so it did not create a accident, but he had to lift. So when he lifted, as we seen the 3 and those guys drive by him, but we were talking about the 3 car and the 14 passing the 95. It took them a lap or so to get by him, but they worked the outside. And what I was excited about is it didn't drag the guys back. They were able to run side by side through the corner. They still have some work to do to be able to make better quality passes. And oh, we see a pass. The 6 car made a pass there, but looked like to me Austin Dillon has the best car inside the dirty air. So Kyle Busch backed out of it and wanted to get to the back of the pack, back of the drafting session to see what he's got here. So let's see what Kyle Busch has.
So, and it's still early. It's important to remember too, it's still very early. This is the first time that they've been on track, and it's only, a handful of cars out here. It's not the full field of 40, so they're still feeling it out. They're still trying to, figure out what they got underneath them.
They definitely are, and you can see, Ryan Priest here, Bubba Wallace running single file. There's Paul Menard, Matt DiBetto right there. They're all running single file. Let's see if they catch up to this draft. But I'm very encouraged. Jimmy Johnson started at the back of that draft, and now he's up in the middle of it. I know, Kyle Busch got to the back of it to see what he can do, and Kyle Busch is definitely going to be the most aggressive here. So we'll see if he can make some passes. Ryan Newman is still hanging in up front. So let's see what we have here. Clint Boyer cannot make the pass on the bottom, and that's because of the momentum on the outside. So the guy on the outside was able to stay in the gas longer. He was able to have momentum driving off the corner. So we'll see if Clint can make the pass. Now we're getting what we call into deep of the run. We're 5, 6, 8 laps into the run. How much are the guys lifting? We've seen Brad Keselowski drive away from it. He drove away from the draft now with, looks like Austin Dillon chasing him. So we'll see if those guys can catch back up to him, and that's what NASCAR is trying to create here. They're not trying to create something where they run double abreast all the way back through the field. They're trying to create to where see if these guys can catch up with the next guy. So let's see if it happens. Kyle Busch is still making his way back through the field. Imagine that, right?
All right, Chris, that front pack, they're still grouped there together, but we were talking a little bit about how the bottom line is you got to make the move on the outside is what it seems like later into this run.
Well, we're early, right? We're early into the learning about this, but yes, as we can see, Kyle Busch doing his thing, goes to the back of the draft, drives back up through it, and now he's at the front. So I've been building this up, been really excited about it, and I'm still excited about it because we have something to work with here, everyone. Like, we're seeing cars make moves on the bottom. We're seeing Jimmy Johnson be able to draft with those guys. Obviously, Kyle Busch, SHR. Like, look at those teams right there. The 4 teams that are up front. Man, they're working it, trying to figure it out. Still, right now, Brad Keselowski led the draft. He fell to about 4th or 5th. Doesn't look like he can make the passes on, the front 3, what we call the front 3 right now. But my question to you, how much sandbagging do you think's going on right now?
I don't know. The biggest thing I'm impressed with, Chris, is when we look back to races last year, if you're 2nd and 3rd place guy or you're 3rd and 4th place guy, we're running side by side like we just saw Jimmy Johnson and Brad Keselowski doing, those first 2 cars would be gone.
Yeah,
they're
definitely
not gone. They're right there. They're still, Kyle Busch is still well within the windshield. Jimmy Johnson making a move on the outside of Boyer right here. Granted, not a full field, so it's just a small sample size, but, I mean, unless people are getting out of it, I mean, you really can't drive away from anybody right now.
You can't, and we see the cautions out there at the racetrack. We don't know why. Maybe it's to get them all back together once again, or even get them in and talk to them. But, yeah, it didn't look like that, it was going to be 20 of them together right there, but it did look like it was going to be 5 to 6 to 8 guys running side by side or running with each other, which that's what we need. We need those guys to run like that. We need somebody to drop to the back of the draft and make some passes and, be cool. I want to jump up and down on my chair right now because it's a work in progress. Like, this is something that we're looking at. I'm sure Jimmy Johnson, those guys, Kyle Busch, all those guys are going to get out of that car. They're going to check, everybody's what they're doing. They're checking the tire temperatures to see how the car reacted in this draft. But what I want to see is what can we do to make these cars even better than what we just seen right there.
I mean, I'm pretty satisfied. I was watching practice like I was watching Las Vegas, 25 laps of racing at Las Vegas. So, to me, I mean, I liked what I saw there. Did you not?
I loved what I saw, and I've been watching the camera here, so I've been watching TV just like you guys, and it's exciting because it's different for me, and I like different. Okay, so this is different. I'm curious. I'll probably call Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace. I'll call somebody tonight and say, hey, what did you think about it? What could you do different? I'll text them or something. You don't call nobody anymore, but I'll text them or something and ask them. But just looking at Bubba Wallace's car, watching him be able to come, he was way back and he was able to catch up with the draft. Looked like him, those guys back there was kind of working it out, trying to see what they had. So let me tell you, I'm excited. At the same time, I'm wondering what can we do to make it better? What's next? What are we going to see? But you're right. It wasn't 40 cars. It wasn't people, it wasn't everybody out there at once. It wasn't a ton of different, teams of how different levels and all. So I'm pretty excited about what I've seen.
Now, going to normal Las Vegas, let's throw back to last year. Where's the groove at that racetrack? And did what you see kind of mimic what we've seen in terms of where you can make a pass? And they can run side by side, sure, but that middle to outside lane really looked like where it was at.
Definitely, and that's for Las Vegas. That's where it's at. We watch the guys win the races at the top of the racetrack, the middle of the racetrack. The turn 1 and 2 is really bumpy there. So watching those guys go through there in the middle is not something uncommon. 3 and 4, I'm sure the grip level is up. I was looking at a tweet from Dale Jr. talking about, yes, it's cool. No rubber on the racetrack, grip levels up. What he means by that, you're able to stay wide open a lot longer. So I'm sure it's a lot different than what it was the last time when we went, when it was super hot, So I liked what I seen be able to run the bottom and the top. Just looked like the bottom kind of bogged the cars down a little bit, and that's something they probably need to work on. That's something that everybody needs to work on to make their cars better on the bottom, or is it something that package creates? So, we'll find out as everybody gets out of their cars, debriefs with their crew chiefs, and figure it.
So what kind of questions are you asking your driver right now? We see a lot of people with their head in the window of the car. What are you asking Brad Keselowski if that's your 2 car?
Normally you're not asking him anything. He's telling you, but they're probably all quiet on the radio because they're not giving their trade secrets away, right? But what they're talking about is, hey, why did you, when you went to the back or when you went to the middle of the pack, why couldn't you pass? What could we do better for you to be able to pass? Because he started out front and he stayed out front. I don't think we didn't see Kyle Busch pass him, but then when Brad got back, he didn't get back to the front. Maybe he didn't want to, but what can we do to make you be able to make that pass? Was we too tight? Were we too loose? Did it move around too much? Were you wide open the entire time? So those are the questions you're asking.
What kind of tools do you have at your disposal? What extra do you bring to the racetrack when we try out something this unique?
Well, we talked about the radiator pan and the stuff that NASCAR gives you with it being bigger. They can change the angle of it. They can move some things around. They have springs. They have shocks. They have a lot of different stuff. For years, they had a package with all the horsepower and the way the cars used to be in 2018. Now it's a total different package. Do we need a different spring in the back? Do we need something different in the front? Can we ride lower? Are we able to kind of trim our car out, get it closer to the ground? So it's a lot of tools that they have, but I'll guarantee you those engineers right now are assimilating. They're regular running stuff to figure out how to get better right this second.
If you're a RCR affiliated team or a Penske affiliated team, is Brad Keselowski and Paul Menard, are they going in the trailer and they talking to each other right now as well?
Yeah, every driver, every crew chief. I watched, I was watching this, and Rodney Childress was out there. I've watched, I'll guarantee you, every crew chief for every organization and probably every driver that doesn't have another obligation is out there watching this, trying to figure it out. Daniel Hemrick's out there watching it. I'm telling you, every single person. I was looking at my watch a minute ago because I was getting some texts from other people saying, what are you doing on TV talking about this? But I'm telling you, everybody at home is watching this. Everybody's trying to figure it out. And they'll get back. They'll talk to each other via emails and other stuff. I'll guarantee you, Paul Wolf, those guys, Todd Gordon, they're sitting there watching what's going on. So everybody's in the trailer, all the engineers, and they're trying to figure out what's next, because they got some more of these 25-lap runs, and you'll keep watching and seeing how this goes.
All right, if you're just now joining us on NASCAR.com, I'm Jonathan Merriman. This is Chris Rice, crew chief at Colleague Racing. So what we're seeing today is the first look at the 2019 rules package at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. That's where we're testing today. So we just had a live look at drafting practice. We've seen single car runs all day long, drivers out there trying to shake out their car, trying to figure out where they're at, what they need. We just got done watching drafting practice. Chris, take me through the day. Are you satisfied with what you've seen from these guys unloading, from what they've been able to tell us before they got out in this pack?
Well, definitely what I'm satisfied with is everyone seemed to embrace it and say, this is something we need to do to be able to get better and have better racing. That's what I'm satisfied with. The racing that I just seen on track was great. I thought was a great start. It was very positive. It's something that we can build on, and it's something that it looked like everybody liked. Everybody's cars wasn't the same. We watched Austin Dillon drive up through there, and then all of a sudden he didn't keep up with the front four. That's okay. Those guys got to go back to work and figure out how he can keep up with those front four. And that's what we want. But we want 4 or 5 guys together, and that's something we've seen with Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Jimmy Johnson was up there running. So that was something I liked. We were talking about the one car with Kurt Busch. He was kind of back at the back of the draft, and he was regular catching it. We don't know how fast he caught it, but he was catching it. That's stuff that we like to see. So when we get to stage races, whatever laps they are, they still together, until a pit stop or whatever goes on.
Now, Jessica Ruffin is on the ground. Hopefully, we'll be hearing from some drivers, Jessica talking to some drivers, and we'll figure out what she's been able to figure out about this a little bit later on in the show. But Chris, for practice session, I'm pretty excited. This is it's kind of what my racing soul needed, a little bit of on-track action before we get to Daytona.
Well, when I was young, I always was excited about testing in January at Daytona. I always was sitting around waiting for testing in January. Even though the racing wasn't over until the end of November, this give me that feel. It's end of January. We're testing cars on the racetrack. I was at Atlanta and on Monday, so this gave me that little bit of fire to be able to get to Daytona and see what everybody has. Everybody steps up with their cars and makes their cars better. So now they've got some under their belt. They're going to work right now. If we could see the shot of their trailers, I'll guarantee you, the computers are going, the guys are listening, they're writing notes. It's pretty exciting to watch.
So we know the first time we see this package full-fledged is going to be Vegas, but what about beyond Vegas? How does this apply to a place like Fontana and Auto Club Speedway?
Wow, because the racing at Fontana Auto Club Speedway has been great, and I just think it just makes it that much better. By the time we get to Auto Club Speedway, Fontana, the guys will understand what they need, right? They'll understand that they need to do this to their race car to be able to run faster, longer, because these guys are the best in the business. I've said it a couple of times. Everyone that's at this test are the best in the business, so they're going to work hard at figuring out what they need, and when they get there, man, it could be not only 4 cars up front, it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 10. So, and that racetrack creates great racing, just like Atlanta. So I'm telling you, if this does what I've seen here today, and it just gets better and better, we all are going to be excited about the racing, right? We all going to be excited about who does what, who won this race. Are we going to see multiple winners? We could. This could create multiple winners, or it could create a different winner every week. We don't know because it's an unknown, but I will tell you what I do know after this. Kyle Busch can still make some moves, can he?
Absolutely. I don't think there was any doubt that Kyle Busch was going to figure it out and be really good off the bat. But I do want to get a little bit of insight for you because NASCAR is at this test. NASCAR has worked really hard with the OEMs, with the teams themselves on figuring out something that will work for everyone with this package. You and your team were a big part in developing kind of the Aero Duct package for the Xfinity cars with that Indy test. What's going on there? What's the conversation like with NASCAR at an event like this?
Well, sometimes what happens is, and I'm sure NASCAR has zero problem with telling it, they get everybody together like a driver's meeting, like a council, and they'll just sit down and they'll talk about it. NASCAR has been so gracious to all us race teams to figure out what's better, right? What can we do to be better? And they'll get the guys together and crew chiefs, get them together and just go, hey, what do we need to do? What did you think about this? Where can we be better? They might not take everything that the guys say, the teams say, because we will manipulate everything, right? Like, we'll manipulate.
You want an advantage.
We want an advantage. If we felt like something. So when we went and tested it at Indy, it was only 3 of us that went and tested it. But we done exactly what NASCAR asked us to do. We followed their guideline, their test plan, and I felt like when we come out of there, that's what created this. When we come out of the Indy test in 2016, when we started working on these Aero Ducts, that's what created what we call drafting at the downforce racetrack, something to where we can pass. The first year at Indy, was it the best racing? Probably not, but it was better than what we had the year before. Then that's what was great about it. That's what's great about this. Was this the best racing that we've seen all in 2018 from every racetrack? Probably not, but it was definitely better than what we have seen in the past. So, and we're only going to get better, right? We're only going to get better. We're not going to go backwards. So I'm telling you, what we see with the Aero Ducts, they're going to have to adjust things. I've said that from the beginning, but at what we've seen today and what I've seen from all the positivity, all the drivers, and, the people I've talked to out there, I feel like we're in a step in the right direction. I've watched Jeff Burton on Twitter all day talk about it, and it's just different of racing. And once we all get used to it, it'll be fun to watch.
Now, I'm not calling you old, but you've been around a while.
Long time.
How have you seen the sport change, and what's different right now? It seems like that conversation between team and NASCAR is probably more open than it's ever been.
Definitely more open than it's ever been, which I'm a principal at our race team now, so like I get to see that end of it, but I feel like it's more open than it's ever been, and it's because, NASCAR wants us to have an input in it. They want the race teams to have an input into what's going on. And Steve O'Donnell, all those guys back at NASCAR, they do a great job of just listening to us. Now, sometimes they have to be the boss man and have to get on us about things that we've done that we shouldn't have. But over the years, I've seen so many rule changes. I've seen, from wickers on the roof to wickers on the spoilers I've seen so many rule changes throughout the years because of exactly what David Reagan said. He said we have to keep up with times. We have to keep up with what's going on. And that's all we're doing here. We have to keep up with everybody that's watching the races, what they want to see, how they want to see it. And we have Jimmy Johnson as a 7-time champion at this test to be able to tell us, I don't know if this is good, or yes, this is awesome. We have Kyle Busch there that is just probably one of the best, and I'm sure Kevin Harvick's out there watching. I'm sure these guys are there at NASCAR in their ear saying, okay, we need to do this, or this is good.
Now, earlier we saw some pictures of Rodney Childers talking to Clint Boyer, and we all know that Rodney's not Clint's crew chief, but this is a big deal, big enough to where multiple crew chiefs from multiple organizations are out there collecting that data. So when Rodney's guy Kevin gets there, they have a shot. So I mean, this is the information coming in from this test is, I mean, this could set your season on fire, right?
Oh, definitely. And you know, we see it time and time again. We watch it. You know, we talk about it on the preview show last year a lot about who's fast right now and how is this team going to be able to catch up. Is the JGR team going to be the fastest team, the Joe Gibbs Racing team, or is it going to be Stewart-Haas? Or did Hendrick catch up over the winter? I mean, it's things to talk about. It is storylines. And here, that all of these guys are trying to make storylines that they're the best team. They're the ones that done the most homework. When we showed up at Daytona last year with a new rules package, Hendrick had absolutely destroyed everybody on speed, right? They went out and sat on the pole. They had done a lot of homework. Then we get to the downforce racetracks. Stewart-Haas Racing with Kevin Harvick, I felt like they was way beyond everybody else, and all four of their teams won. So, yes, this is where everybody's trying to make the headlines for this year in 2019.
And it's still going to be cyclical, right? I mean, when last year, obviously, the big three dominated all year long, but usually in a season, it's the Toyotas are fast here, but so-and-so catches up. Oh, and so-and-so else catches up. You're still expecting the same thing with this Aero package as people learn and it evolves itself?
Oh, absolutely. You know, somebody we haven't talked about this entire session today is Martin Truex Jr., one of the big three, right? We haven't talked about him. He's going to JGR. He's already tested this. He was at Auto Club Speedway testing this. You know, they done that test a while back. So I feel like what they've learned there and what the guys are learning here is only going to get better. It's only going to get better, everyone. It is only what it is right now because that's the first time. That's the first time anybody got to run it in a group of cars. So now, go to work on it. You know, when we were at the All-Star race, that was a little different, right? Only 10-lap races. It was very short-lived. Now we're looking at, you know, we're going out here for a 300-400 miler. So now you got to get your car where it runs a long time.
So, and another thing to keep in mind, they weren't racing for anything out here either. If that's a stage win, I don't think you see, you know, those top four cars single file, which granted they were trying to pass each other, they were trying to make moves, but when you got a payday on the line, things are going to be a little bit different.
Well, if you would have told Kyle Busch somebody would have gave him a snowball derby trophy right there, I'll guarantee you he'd have never dropped back to the middle of that draft. Yeah, and that's what I said. How many people are sandbagging? You know, we were talking about that when we were off air. How many people are sandbagging? Did Kyle just drive up through there and just kind of start half throttling it so he could watch his mirror and see where the guys were, just so you don't see how fast that guy, his car is. So you work on it, but not so hard. You think your car is good, you don't work on it so hard. How many guys were doing that? Then you watch those front four just kind of itch away from the guys behind them. But those guys behind them were racing. They were racing pretty hard, you know, to figure out what their cars needed. The front four there at the end wasn't racing that hard.
In the early part of that section, we talked about Matt DiBenedetto. His name came up a lot as a guy, oh man, look at the 95 car, because he was giving Clint Boyer in the 14 a fight there at the first part of that, and Austin Dillon couldn't get by him either. So, I mean, definitely I think the 95 team's going to benefit a lot, especially with their backing from TRD and their relationship with Gibbs.
Yeah, I think Casey Kane helped them step up to, you know, do another whole level, and then Casey had his issues, but now with Matt going over, and I feel like Matt, if nothing else, he works out harder than anybody else, right? Like, so, but like, I feel like Matt is going to be one of the guys that, you know, is going to kind of shake hands a little bit. He goes from maybe a 25th, 20th place guy, whatever his average was. Now maybe can he be a 15th to 10th place guy every now and then? You know, we've seen him have great races at Bristol. Is it going to be a place like this with this package that creates him to be able to run in the top 10 all day? So he was very competitive right there. He's very aggressive, and that's what he has to do, because this could be his chance to make it to one of the elite teams.
What do you think this does to a driver's mentality to know that with this package, you might not be able to get away from these guys?
Oh, it frustrates you. I can tell you, you're right. Everybody watching this has driven down the interstate and almost had road rage when a guy just sat right beside you and the guy wouldn't leave you alone, or the guy's headlights was in your mirror. Everybody has done that. Now they're doing this at 180, 190 miles an hour, and they can't get away from that guy beside them. It is very frustrating, and I don't even know how to explain it any other different than that. It is super frustrating.
So that means means that it's good for us, right? Because we have more side-by-side racing to talk about.
It is definitely good when you have side-by-side racing because you get to talk about it. You know, maybe you look at the 14, he leads every lap and then all of a sudden loses the race at the end of the race. That's not good for them, but it's great for the storylines, right?
Now, John Probst is going to be joining us in a few minutes. Obviously, he's been key in the development of this and the implementation of this from the NASCAR side. So a little tease for you. We will have John on a little bit later. But Chris, I want to know, I mean, because you're well connected within the garage. Twitter's been blowing up all day. Dale Jr.'s tweeted about the live tests, and several other drivers have tweeted about the live tests. How big is this in terms of the industry? I mean, people are paying attention to what's going on out here.
Well, it's Thursday at the end of January. We're, like you said, 18 days away from the Daytona 500, I believe.
17. I was
17.
Wrong about that,
oh, my goodness. 17 days away from the Daytona 500. Every single person in racing only knows one thing, and that's fast, 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 fast. So we go through the wintertime, we spend December, and we spend January looking for this. We're wanting to do this. You know, we want to unload at a place and be the fastest car. We want to look the best. We want to be that group. Now that they get to see this on NASCAR.com, everybody loves it. It's a great debate for everyone. Is this package going to be great? Is this package not going to be great? I feel like, sitting right here, that this is something we needed to do, and we've needed to do it for a while. So I feel like that this is going to be a good thing. Is it going to, I've said it time and time again, is this something that we got to work at? Absolutely. But I can guarantee you, when Kevin Harvick won this race in the spring of last year, he still was working when they went back in the fall. So everybody's going to keep working no matter whether it's this package or another one. I'm excited about this package.
All right, Chris, we do have John Probst standing by with Jessica Ruffin. Jessica, what can you tell us?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm here with John Probst, Vice President of Racing Development and Innovation for NASCAR. So a lot to unpack with this rules package, and a lot of the teams are getting to know some of the rules and just learning as much as they possibly can. You know, we have them drafting right now. What have you noticed just from observing?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously this is a journey we started a few years ago, you know, from the NASCAR side, trying to bring you know, more entertaining and competitive racing to our sport. And, you know, we've taken this journey with our OEMs and the teams, and obviously NASCAR has taken a leading role in that. And this is the first time we got to see 14 cars go out there and run for 25 laps, and it's so far so good. I've done this long enough not to, if it was bad, not to think it was too bad, and if we thought it was good, knowing that, you know, we probably still have some work to do, but so far so good.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to go to the studio for some questions from Jonathan and Chris.
Hey, John, Chris Rice here from Charlotte in the studio. What we seen in the drafting was, to us, was great. It looked great, and I know we started this a couple of years ago. Was you pleased with what you've seen on the racetrack so far?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that the takeaway I took from that was, you know, if you watch the beginning of the run, there were some cars that were pretty good and stayed at the front there. And then if you watch the 1 and the 21, they kind of hung out at the back there. In the last 5 laps, they were actually coming pretty quick through the field. And I stopped by and talked to Travis Geisler there at Penske before I came up here. And, you know, they're talking about, you know, having to make compromises as to, like, if you just want pure speed or if you want to be better later in the run, which should make for some pretty good, like, strategy decisions that the teams are going to have to make kind of on how they feel yellows may fall during a race. You know, if they want a fast car to check out, hopefully get a lot of yellows and just keep doing that. Or if you think there's going to be a lot of green flag runs and you got to set your car up, maybe you're not so good at the beginning, but by the end, you know, you're coming to the front.
Hey, John, Jonathan
Awesome.
Merriman.
I think we have another question from the studio.
I just want to know, you talked about talking to Travis Geisler. How big of a conversation has this effort been? How much has NASCAR itself worked with the OEMs, worked with the teams to come up with this package that we saw work pretty well for 25 laps out on the track?
Yeah, like I said, we're pleased. By no means are we declaring any kind of victory, but, you know, we've had an ongoing discussion with, you know, Travis and obviously people in his positions at the other teams. A lot of the key members at the OEMs have been instrumental. Matter of fact, a lot of the OEMs were pretty key in doing a lot of the simulation that we needed to do to start figuring out downforce levels, drag levels, and where we wanted to land, you know, at the horsepower. And, you know, in addition to the OEMs, we actually have a really good relationship with all the engine builders, and they were involved as well through the whole process. So, you know, we feel like all the big pieces are in place here. We're encouraged by what we saw on the track. but by no means, we've all done this long enough that we're not going to sit here and declare victory or anything. We know we got to keep working. These teams are going to keep massaging this package, and we just got to kind of stay with them to make sure that, we put on some really exciting races for our fans next year.
John, in 2016, we went and tested this at Indianapolis, and I felt like this was a direction that we were going to go in NASCAR. And I feel that this is something that is going to brighten our future. So do you think that this helps any certain particular driver? Do you think this helps a guy that might have, 15 years of racing under his belt versus somebody that has 5 years under his belt? Or do you think it's just putting them all together and letting them figure it out once they go racing? Is it driven towards one, or do you feel like it's everyone?
Well, we're trying to make it as competitive as we can from the top to the bottom. I think the one thing, that's important out of this is that we're not trying to create some artificial level of competition. I think you're still going to see the good guys are going to go out and win, compete for wins, and that's kind of the way we wanted it to be. And, that's probably the way it should be. We want to have entertaining, but we want to keep the competition in it as well.
All right, John, one more for you. What do you need to see in the further drafting sessions to carry on what we saw in this last? What does NASCAR need to see to be satisfied throughout the final 2 days of this test?
Yeah, it's not like we have some metric that says if we have 5 passes in this draft, we should have 6 passes in the next. I think that what we saw so far, we saw like from the front of the field to the back of that field was pretty tight even after 25 laps. I would bet that if you were to look at the delta from 1st to 14th when we were here in the fall would have been a whole lot more than that. I think that right now we want to just see them go out there, and the other end of it too, they're testing. They're not necessarily out there racing. So, we want to emphasize this is a test. We're happy with the way it's going now. I don't think there's anything that's like over the hill that we can't see right now that would make us leave here and feel like we're on the wrong track. We're committed to this package, and we're pretty excited for the races it's going to put on. Now
Daytona's right around the corner as well. How excited are you guys to get back on the racetrack and get back to full-blown competition?
We're very excited. Matter of fact, we've been using the off season to kind of go visit some of the other series and kind of take notes on how they're doing stuff. We were at the Chili Bowl. We've been to some Formula One races there in the fall, and we just like racing. And if it's ours, it's ours. We love it, and we're fans of all racing, so we're excited.
All right, we appreciate the time,
awesome.
Jessica,
Thank you
John.
so much for being with us today, John.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and there's certainly so much left to unpack here in Las Vegas. Got a full day left, and also tomorrow. Jonathan?
All right, it's not every day you get time with John Probst, so good insight there. Satisfied with what you heard? It seems like that they know that this is going to be a small process, baby steps to get to where they want, but it seems like success. Right?
I felt like I gave him a tough question, right? I kind of got him off the cuff. I gave him a tough question of who is this driven for? Because that's a question everybody's going to ask, right? Is this package driven towards one certain young guy or older guy? We talk about this. We've talked about it in the show. Now, what my opinion is he gave you what this is driven for. This is driven for entertainment, but we don't want to take the competition out of it. So 25 laps into the run, we want the tires and the guys and everybody else to fall off and figure out how to get faster, right? So I feel like that's what they're working towards. He's already talked to Travis Geisler from Penske, which is a very smart guy, and I know they had a lot to do with it. So I'm telling you, they're doing their homework to figure out what is best for those guys in NASCAR and the teams.
Bottom line, though, if you're a good race car driver, you're a good race car driver. And I know from production days talking to all these guys, they don't care. If it's got a steering wheel, if it's got a motor, if it's got 4 wheels on it, they think they can go out there and win in it. So I do think it is geared towards everything. It might level some things up a little bit. Sure, certain people might, run better with this or run better with this. But at the end of the day, if you're a race car driver, you're going to have to learn to adapt to just about everything, from the weather to whether your spoiler's 8 inches high. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And the key is we all work hard to make our cars the fastest on the racetrack and be able to pass. And just like what John talked about, you got to make a decision. Do you want it fast for 2 laps, or do you want it fast for 200 laps? So it's just exciting to watch that, we had a pretty good simulated 25-lap race with 14 cars. They got some good data. Now they'll go and work some more tonight and this afternoon. They have all day tomorrow that we'll be watching them on all their social media channels. And when they get back, we'll have a good feel about what we're going to see when we go to Vegas.
Well, something that I picked up on as well is that built-in adjustability. He was talking with Geisler over there at Penske. Do you want a bullet or do you want something with a little bit more downforce in it? Talk about the difference of that, and guys that do like to slide around a little bit, and we'll be able to build that into their race car.
Definitely. If you can run your car where it's sideways, and when we talk about being, it's sideways because it's trimmed out, can those guys drive that, or do they have to have a tighter race car that's going to last longer? And that's what they want. That's what NASCAR wants. They want some adjustability in their car. They just don't want to give them this piece of paper and say, okay, go race it. They want to give them some adjustability, but not let that box be too big, right? So I just think that, I've always said this, the big three's going to rise. The big three's going to rise when they get there. But can the other guys be able to keep up now and create some passes and passes for wins, maybe do something different on pit strategy? Are you going to be drafting to be able to, save fuel like you talked about? So now the crew chief's got to go to work and see what they have.
All right, you talk about the big three. Obviously, Kevin Harvick not at this test, Martin Truex Jr. not at this test. What are those guys doing right now? We know Rodney's there. What is Truex and Cole doing, and what's Kevin Harvick doing right now?
I'll bet Cole's out there trying to figure out what to do next with it. The 18 car. He's figuring out what is going on. I'm sure those guys are sitting back watching it, or if not, they'll be studying it as soon as they come home. So I'm telling you, they're not laying down. They're not sitting outside by the pool drinking them a drink or nothing like that. They're sitting at home working, trying to figure out what's next. And some of the guys already know what they're going to feel, right? Like I think maybe Austin Dillon had his car tuned up to like he felt last year, and maybe that was a little bit too far, because we seen him early on make a lot of passes, and then middle part of that run we didn't see him make so many passes. So I think some guys are already studying that and figuring that out, but the big three are probably sitting here watching this like we were.
So when you go out to a test, how do you determine what is a good day for your race team?
A good day is learning, hitting the test plan, feeling like you come home with something that's going to make you better. I can back it up to taking Justin Haley to Atlanta on Monday, ran 250 some laps. That was a good day. The kid's never been in a Xfinity car. It was time for him to make a bunch of laps. That's a good day. If you can come out of this and learn something from the drafting and what you can make some speed gains, that's a good weekend.
All right, I think we're getting ready to wrap up the entire show. Chris, what else is on your mind before we get out of here?
I'm ready to get to Daytona, and if you don't let me out of here quick, I'm not going to be able to make it. So I'm excited about this package. I know it's a work in progress, but I thank NASCAR and every team member and all the OEMs for working on this to be able to make the racing better.
All right, we want to put a big thank you out to the drivers who joined us today. Obviously, Jessica Ruffin as well from NASCAR.com, John Probst from NASCAR, Chris Rice, crew chief at Colleague Racing, and from me to you watching at home, thanks for watching. Excited to get 2019 started off on the right foot. Daytona just 17 days away.